What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio. This is Stat Diggers for UFC Mexico. We have what text me? Oh, yeah, Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. I literally just talked about this fight like 10 minutes ago and broke it down. So I already forgot. So we're off to a great start here. It's been a long freaking day. Woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, who does that? Who wakes up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday? That's just terrible. Been up all day researching these fights. And I'm glad to be back here. We are here with Uncle Weezy. Weezy, you made it out alive in terms of the beer fest. You went to a beer fest over the weekend, and you're here. And I think we're all very proud of you for being here on a Sunday.
Yeah, alive, but entirely pickled. You know, I had a long weekend and I drank entirely too much beer. Really kind of went hard in the paint as if I was still a young man, which I'm not. But we had a lot of fun and even got to watch the pay-per-view. That was a phenomenal card. You know, I mean, just so many fun fights. That Dern Lemos fight was such a banger. Ilya Topuria is absolutely the man. What I mean, that kid, what he's accomplished at 27 is phenomenal, and it was a great card. Really looking forward to breaking down this next card. But yeah, glad to be back in Chicago. Had a great weekend. Now I'm ready to break down some fights and do it all over again for UFC Mexico this week. And I like the looks of this card too.
Yeah, 100%. This card's awesome. Like, this card kind of, to me, at least has that pay-per-view feel. We're in Elevation, which I love, because the last card that was at Elevation was Salt Lake last year, and it was like one of the best cards of my life. I was hitting Jake Matthews submission round 2. I hit Roman Kopylov KO round 2. Hit a bunch of round 2, round 3 props on that Elevation card in Salt Lake City, and that's what I'm going to be trying to attack here. I want to attack guys with trash cardio, guys like Eric Silva, guys like Daniel Lacerda da Silva, just guys with just terrible cardio, putting them in Elevation. I think we're going to get some late finish props that are going to stick out this week. But before we get started, guys, if you guys could please do us a favor, leave a like on the video, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. We go live every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, outside of last week because of the Super Bowl, and we didn't want to compete with them. But we're here tonight. I do want to shout out the Pub Sports Radio Pick'ems contest. It is free to enter, 100% free to enter. $100 to first each and every week. Go to pubsportsradio.com and check out those pick'em contests there. All right, so going to do a quick recap of last night. And like you said, Weezy, last night was an incredible card from a fan perspective. Enjoyed it thoroughly from fight number 1 to the end of the card. The main event was phenomenal as well. I didn't have a ton of action last night. It was kind of odd. Like, it was a pay-per-view card. I didn't really go that heavy. I only bet, I think, on like 3 or 4 fights, maybe. I think 3 fights last night. So yeah, didn't have a ton of action. But the action I did have was I had Rinya Nakamura inside the distance, minus 135. And I had Rinya Nakamura by submission, plus 400. And I actually earned a CLV trophy, closing line value, because I beat the sub prop line by like $2. So that was nice. Got to cash my CLV. But holy crap. I know you missed the prelims. Let me tell you what the heck happened. Carlos Vera went out there and he basically pulled a Ryan Hall, right? Like, he was rolling for leg, like we kind of expected, right? It was the worst fight I've ever seen. Rinya Nakamura landed only 30 or so ground strikes. I mean, it was just terrible. And I don't even think he attempted a submission. Like, at least in the Nakamura Fernie Garcia fight, he attempted like 5, 6, 7 submissions in that fight. But against Carlos Vera, didn't even get close to even attempting a submission. What he was doing most of the time was defending. Very annoying. I love that. I love that spot. I thought, hey, Rinya Nakamura, this guy can probably finish Carlos Vera, 36-year-old bantamweight, on short notice. And on top of that, Carlos Vera actually got hurt. Like, his shoulder was hurt in like the first round, and he still couldn't finish Carlos Vera. Rinya Nakamura, get some help, for the love of God. Get some help. And then I also had Marcos Rogério de Lima early sub props. I like those plays. I had sub 1 850 and then sub 2 plus 1800. And he tried for it. And that's all I can ask for. He hurt Junior Tafa with a leg kick. He goes for a takedown, gets on top. And I'm like, yes, it's time. It's time. And he was trying to work for it. Couldn't quite get there. Ends up TKOing him with the leg kick in round number 2. And then the fight that I had the most action on was the Anthony Hernandez-Roman Kopylov fight. In this fight, it was going to make or break my night. If I lost on this fight, it would be a terrible night. If I won, it's going to be a winning night. And what I had was my biggest bet of the card. The fight doesn't go to decision, minus 225 for 2.25 units to win one. I thought that line was way off, right? Striker versus grappler matchup, a fight that I think 8 out of their 10 fights in the UFC have finished inside the distance. That's 80%. I thought the minus 225 was very generous. Even talked about, told you earlier, Weezy, I might max bet the fight doesn't go. Didn't quite get there, but hit that to win one unit. And then I was like, okay, this fight's probably going to end in the second or third round, like most Roman Kopylov fights do. Roman Kopylov, his entire career, has only had one fight end in the first round. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to bet the fight ends at round 2 for 0.75 units at plus 320. And then the fight ends in round 3, half a unit plus 550, something like that. And then the round 2 obviously hit. The fight is a good decision hit. And it ended up being like a really small winning night, plus 15 or 0.20 units last night. So didn't have a ton of action for a pay-per-view card. I think I'm probably going to have more action this week. But Weezy, how did your night go outside of, I know you missed the prelims, but you were able to catch that main card.
Yeah, so I actually got reverse swept on my 4 bets. I had the under 1.5 rounds. I had 3 closing line value trophies though.
There you go.
I got the under 1.5 rounds in the Quinlan Barlow fight at plus 145. It closed at plus 105, but it just under 2.5 cash, but he just couldn't get it done in under 7.5 minutes. So that was down 1.5 units. I had 1 unit on the Brenson Hibero money line. I got it at plus 125, closed at plus 100, and he got knocked out in the first round. That kid Zhang's got a great chin on him. Even in the Tuco Tacos fight, he was eating some big shots, ate some big shots from Hibero, and just absolutely cleaned his clock. That was a great performance by Zhang. I had the decision only prop for Mackenzie Dern at plus 200. And that fight was the best fight of the night. Very close first round. Could have went either way. Second round, Lemos should have finished her. I think clinched up with her a couple times when she had her badly hurt, which was, perplexing to me. But, I kind of felt like, and then the third round, Dern won. But that was just such a fun fight to watch because Mackenzie Dern showed so much toughness coming back from that severe beating in the second round to win the third. And she got on top in the second half of the first round too. So she's starting to get takedowns, starting to win minutes on the ground. So I thought that was a really gutty performance by her. So, the fight could have went either way, didn't win that bet, plus 200. I'd make that bet again, but it just didn't cash. Lost the coin flip there. And then the last bet was I had a bet on Henry Cejudo at plus 189 before the injury news came out, and he won the first round, but he looked like a different version of himself in the second and the third after winning the first. It looked like he was injured, and then it looked like he hurt his forearm in the fight too. But congratulations, Henry Cejudo has retired now, so he's had a phenomenal combat sports career. Flyweight champion, bantamweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, and he went out fighting a guy in Dvalishvili who's probably going to be the next champion because, boy, is that a tough stylistic matchup for Sean O'Malley. I can't wait for that fight, and I hope that's the fight that gets made next. But, after the Vera O'Malley fight, obviously. But, so down 4.75 units because I also had a quarter unit on Anthony Hernandez to win in round 3. So that didn't work out. He just didn't quite make it to round 3. But, the reads weren't way off or anything like that. It was just, I beat a lot of line movement. The couple things just didn't go my way, but we're going to try to get it back this week. I've already got 1 bet this week. Actually, 2. I've already got 2 bets this week, and I'm liking some other spots. Want to talk them through with you, Brady, and you guys in the chat. Thank you for joining us. I'm ready to get back into it this week.
Yes, sir. We just hit 100 live viewers, so thank you guys for joining us. Let's shout out the chat before we dig into these fights. UFC Shell, first one in here. Let's go. We got Steve in the building. Ever since forever. We got Andrew G in the building as well. We got UFC Fight Night Mexico. This is a banger. Absolutely, I cannot wait for this card. We got Kiwi in the building. What is up, Hunter? We got Sigma. We got Jeff. We got Bob in the chat. What is up, Bob? Hitman. We got Zizzo. Zizou, number 5. He's number 5 there.
Number 5, yes.
We got J-Bone on your birthday. Shout out to J-Bone.
Happy birthday. Yes.
Happy birthday to J-Bone. We got Pink saying Brady decided on Paulo or Taporia yet or still debating. Somebody sent me a dono in my chat Saturday and asked who I'd rather go on a date with. And typically I would answer all donos, but that's actually the first one where I didn't give an answer for obvious reasons. And I actually said I would refund him the dono because I don't want to answer that. I don't want to go on a date with either of these guys. Both great fighters, but I don't want to go on a date with them.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, Dixon, I knew my inside the distance bet was going in the trash as soon as I saw Rinya Nakamura throwing elbows to the thigh of 36-year-old bantamweight Carlos Vera. I mean, Rinya looked minus 1,400, but my goodness, it didn't even attempt to finish the guy. No, Dixon. He's a great fighter. He's just not a great finisher, I guess. Fluffy round 2 sub. Yeah, shout out to Fluffy for getting it done. That was incredible. Fluffy round 3 and Barlow. Oh, he
had my kind of night.
Yeah, close. Yeah. Very close. We got Marcus in the building. What is up, Marcus? We got MMA Jesus in the building. This card is amazing. It is. For a fight night card, this card's awesome. We're out of the Apex for 2 cards in a row now. And we got Richard saying, love this show. Appreciate you, Richard. And yeah, shout out to Taporia. He talked his talk and he walked the walk. My goodness. This guy showed a ton of confidence and went in there and starched the featherweight goat. It was incredible. Luckily, me and Weezy did not end up pulling the trigger on Volkanovski. Thought about it, but I had a bad feeling in the back of my head, and that's what happened. He got knocked out. So yeah, shout out to Taporia. Big fan of him. I think he'll be champion for a while. I don't know who's stopping him anytime soon. But Weezy, we got some fights to talk about here. We're going to get right into it with the first fight on the card. We got Muhammad Naimov going against Eric Silva. We got Naimov, 29 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. Eric Silva, 36 years old, 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. Naimov, he is 7 years younger. Same age there, or same height there. And then it's going to be Silva with a 1-inch reach advantage. Silva's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, had a TKO win against Anvar Bozavarov on the Contender Series. And then he lost by submission to TJ Brown. Let me repeat that. This guy lost to TJ Brown by submission in the 3rd round. Just wild to even say out loud. As far as Naimov, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, 2-0 in the UFC. Made his debut on short notice up a weight class against Jamie Malarkey. Was losing pretty much every single minute for the most part, and then landed a big shot, knocked out Jamie Malarkey. Great win there as the biggest dog on the card at the time. And then also went out there and beat Nathaniel Wood as well, which is a great win. I'm very high on Nathaniel Wood. So yeah, I went and looked into Naimov. And yeah, his 2 wins are solid. Jamie Malarkey and Nathaniel Wood are, 20 times better any wins than Eric Silva has. So that's good. I think the cardio of Naimov could potentially be an issue, but it has looked better as of late. The 3rd round against Wood wasn't the best look, but I'm not too worried about the here because I don't think Silva is going to really have much left if this fight was to get to the 3rd round. So yeah, I think Naimov's, he's solid. He's a good striker, good wrestler, good grappler. Just a really all-round, well-rounded fighter. He is training at elevation as well, which you got to like for this fight. As far as Eric Silva, went and watched his fight against TJ Brown, and it was atrocious, I think is a good word. Just an atrocious performance, just making mistake after mistake, submission over position. He had to have gotten reversed by TJ Brown like 20 times, completely gassed out by the 2nd round. And like I said, getting submitted by TJ Brown in the 3rd round especially is just, it's unheard of. It's just unheard of. So yeah, terrible look there. Prior to that, he was on a solid win streak, but against low-level competition. This should be Naimov here. This should be Naimov, potentially even inside the distance. I don't like the cardio of Silva. What I will say is, though, for this camp, he is training with Diego Lopez in them. So maybe the cardio is a little bit improved, doing a fight camp in, where are they at, Weezy? Where is Diego Lopez's gym?
Oh, it's supposedly at elevation. We're talking about Lobo Gym, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. So maybe his cardio is a little bit better, but it's hard to go out there and pick Silva, who I think is one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Yeah, the 2nd biggest dog on the card here. So yeah, it's going to be Naimov for me. Thought about maybe parlaying up with something last week. Didn't quite get to it, but I think I might have to attack a Naimov. Maybe inside the distance could be interesting. Naimov 2-3 could be interesting. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I want to attack these guys with terrible cardio, and Silva is a guy has shown terrible cardio, especially in that TJ Brown fight. My gosh, just a terrible, terrible look. So yeah, Naimov inside the distance. Naimov 2-3 is what I'm going to be looking at this week. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I parlayed up Naimov already, and look, I was so low on Eric Silva going into that TJ Brown fight that I bet on TJ Brown to win. Yeah. I mean, and I was sitting, dude, I said on Monday of that week, I'm like, all right, I watched tape of like, all right, I guess I'm betting TJ Brown. But I pulled that shit where I was like, you know what? You better sleep on that, Weezy. You just said you're going to bet on TJ Brown. And like, it took me until like Thursday to be like, okay, yeah, no, I'm doing this. I'm doing, I was trying to talk myself out of it. One of those things where it's like, I'd almost rather leave the money on the table than chance losing betting on TJ Brown, because the emotional strain of doing that as a capper who has shows that where we have to be accountable to the public, Yeah. You just didn't want to do that. But that's how low I was on Eric Silva. Look, Eric Silva's almost 37 years old. I don't, if changing gyms at that point, aren't you really kind of like a finished product as a featherweight?
I think a lot of guys are probably just changing gyms for this fight in specific because it is at elevation. That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because when Cain Velasquez got tired in Mexico City, that became like a thing where people were like, man, if you go to Mexico City, Cain Velasquez got tired in Mexico City. Please get used to that elevation, get acclimated to that, because it's a big part of succeeding if fights go past the first round at that kind of elevation. But Silva's, I mean, he's looked good against very low level Central American regional scene competition, but as almost a 37-year-old featherweight, and now you're fighting a guy in Naimov who beat guys on the regional scene that were 10 times better than the guys that Silva beaten on the regional scene. And now this guy's been in the UFC. He's 2-0 in the UFC, and he's knocked out Malarkey, and he's beaten Nathaniel Wood, who's a phenomenal fighter. So coming off a win over Nathaniel Wood, it almost seems bizarre to me that they would put Eric Silva against this guy. Eric Silva's coming off a loss to TJ Brown. Muhammad Naimov is coming off a win over Nathaniel Wood, and they made this fight. Doesn't that seem bizarre to you, Brady?
Yeah.
I don't understand this. It almost kind of feels like a trap, but no, Naimov's better than this guy everywhere. He hits 10 times harder on the feet, and he's a much better wrestler. So Silva, we see a guy here who got 3 takedowns against Brown and gave up 2, but got 18% control time for and allowed 71% control time allowed. So this guy is somebody that you can absolutely wrestle, put on his back, and keep him there for extended periods of time if you don't feel like dealing with his striking. But I think Naimov's a much better striker than this guy anyway. So, I mean, I think wherever Naimov wants this fight, he can finish it there. And I think he's going to finish this guy. If TJ Brown is finishing you,
oh gosh,
I think Muhammad is going to knock this guy out. Maybe first round, maybe second round. But yeah, he's minus 300. I think this line just keeps getting fatter all week because it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he could be minus 600 by the end of the week, because I'm not entirely sure how Eric Silva wins this fight. Maybe you can tell me, Brady.
Just snatching up a sub. I mean, he is aggressive with the submissions, overly aggressive, I'd say, to his detriment. Like, he makes a ton of mistakes.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're making a ton of mistakes as a 36-year-old, now you're 36 in 10 months, I mean, are you really going to clean that up at that age?
No.
Yeah, so, yeah, I like Naimov a lot here, a lot.
Yep. I almost parlayed him myself. I still haven't done a parlay this year, believe it or not. So kind of sticking to my guns there. But yeah, I think he should be a solid parlay piece. I'm going to be looking at more specifically like the inside the distance prop. Like you said, Weezy, if someone that does lingerie commercials is finishing you, then Naimov should be able to. Do you know if Naimov is doing any lingerie store commercials?
I don't know. Maybe like Tajikistani lingerie. I don't know, man. Look, let me tell you something. If I was trying to sell lingerie, I think Muhammad Naimov would be very low on my list of people that I really wanted to get that sales number up. I don't associate him with that at all. I associate him with shaving the asses of fraudulent fighters with bad regional scene competition records like Eric Silva.
Yep. So yeah, we'll see what the props open up at. The under is set at 2.5. The under 2.5 is -160. It opened up -115. Yeah, I think this fight finishes. I think at some point, it could be early. Honestly, could be early, could be late, but I think Naimov does get a finish at some point. So Naimov inside the distance, maybe some late props, and there is 36-year-old Eric Silva making the camp switch, training with Brandon Moreno there. Is that Alessandro Costa there? It looks like Diego Lopez. Who's that guy that's next to Silva?
He looks like a smaller version of Pereira. Michelle
Yeah,
Pereira.
right.
Who is that? Almost looks like Ponzinibbio.
Nah, it's not.
It's the same tattoo on the
Maybe
lower leg.
maybe Ponzinibbio's evil twin. I don't know.
Look at the tattoos. I think that's Ponzinibbio.
Let's see if I can zoom in. I wish he would tag him. Come on, Eric Silva.
Yeah,
Tag.
yeah. Come on, you're killing us. We're trying to
so.
watch this on his. Like I'm putting my face in my own camera, trying to get a closer look.
Yeah,
so I think I burned out my eyes drinking too much this weekend.
Yeah, there's him getting one-on-one with Diego Lopez, who's a very handsome fighter, Diego.
Beautiful head of hair on that kid.
Yeah, so we'll see if that works out for him, but I don't like his chances. Like I said, outside of him maybe catching Naimov, and it has to be a submission because he's not knocking out Naimov. I think Eric Silva. I think there's a massive striking discrepancy there.
Yeah, I mean, Naimov hits extremely hard, and even if you hit him, he's got such a great chin, Naimov, that it's going to be hard to be the one knocking him out. I think all the finishing equity here is on Muhammad.
Yep. Same here.
Well, I mean, no, you're right though. You're right. He could snatch up a sub. It's freak leg lock, bad choice by Naimov on the ground. Anything can happen. This is MMA. Nothing's a lock.
The new fraud, Eric Silva. Yeah, there's a couple frauds on this card. You actually have called a couple of these frauds. You called Eric Silva a fraud. You nailed it. I believe you called Daniel Lacerda a fraud from the beginning. I believe you did.
The bad regional scene record with wins over nobody. Yeah. And there's one other one that I've famously called.
The most notorious one was Dennis Bondar. You called him a phony, and yeah, you nailed that one. You've been nailing these phonies, Weezy. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, these phonies, they can beat the pretzel vendors. I mean, like poor Gennady Gitlin, has 2 losses. Fantastic pretzel vendor, not a great regional scene fighter.
Wait, who'd you say? What's his name?
Gennady Gitlin. And actually, when we talked about Bondar a couple stat tickers ago, when we were going through his regional scene record, he had 2 wins over Gennady Gitlin, and the Sherdog Competition Committee has removed one of the wins as like, this is not a professional win, because the guy is a famous pretzel vendor and a phenomenal one at that, just not much of a fighter.
Oh, no, you're right. So we'll move on to the next fight. We have Felipe Dos Santos going against Victor Altamirano. We got Altamirano, 33 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. Felipe Dos Santos, 23 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Dos Santos, 10 years younger, 1-inch height disadvantage, and at the same reach there. Victor Altamirano is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Carlos Candelario. On the Contender Series, a decision loss to Carlos Hernandez in his debut. Knockout win against Daniel Lacerda da Silva. A decision win against Vinicius Salvador. Another fraud you called. Another bum you called, Weezy. Shout out to you. And then a loss to Tim Elliott. As far as Felipe Dos Santos, he made his debut against Manuel Kopp. Lost that fight by decision. And yeah, this line is kind of wild to me, dude. We have Felipe Dos Santos almost -300. And it's one of those fights where I think you're overrating somebody in a loss. Because, yes, he lost to Manuel Kopp. He did win a round on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. But I don't know. I went back and watched his fights outside of that Kopp fight, and it wasn't all that impressive at all. He's getting taken down in every single fight. But, this guy's super young, right? He's 23 years old, training at Shoot to Box Diego Lima. I think he's going to be making improvements. And that was the best performance we've ever seen from him in that Manuel Kopp fight. And him having some moments was very impressive. I don't think Victor Altamirano is going to have the grappling, the ground control to be able to hold this guy down. I think this is primarily going to stay on the feet. And when it does, I do think that Santos hits harder. I think he's going to be higher volume. I think he probably has the better cardio. So I like Santos to win. It's just minus 300. I'm not so sure I want to play that. So, Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one here?
I think that this is going to be one of the most fun fights on the card because the way this guy Dos Santos fights, being a shoot box Diego Lima guy, they're going to have dyed blonde hair. They're going to walk forward. They're going to throw a ton of volume. They're going to stay in your face and they're going to make you fight. And you don't have to do that to Victor Altamirano. Victor Altamirano is down to scrap. He's there. He's only been finished once in his career. And he's an absolutely tough dude. So these guys are gonna throw down. Now they're both pretty good everywhere. Altamirano, like you said, Dos Santos can be taken down and held down, but Altamirano 5 of 27 on his takedowns. So he's only getting his takedowns at an 18.5% clip. So not the best grappling efficiency numbers. He's tried more takedowns than his opponents have, and he's getting only 42% of the control time. And then you look at Dos Santos in that fight against Kopp, 20.68 distance strike attempts per minute. So you love to see that because Altamirano, he's kind of like a tricky striker. I think he's got a taekwondo or a karate base, very traditional martial arts, wide stance, bladed, a lot of kicks, a lot of flashy stuff, a lot of spinning stuff. But Dos Santos can kind of get inside of that wide stuff because he's just walking forward. He's marching you down and he's throwing volume the entire time. So I think it's going to be a bit of a car crash, man. And you got a guy in Altamirano who's only been finished once. Felipe Dos Santos has only one loss, and it's to Manuel Kopp. And Manuel Kopp didn't finish him.
Yeah,
so
tough.
That's really impressive. On short notice, Manuel Kopp's a notorious finisher. I mean, the guy is a phenomenal finisher, almost 90% in his career before the Dos Santos fight. So the fact that he's going, a full 15 shows that he's a very durable guy also. So I don't know what the overs are here, but I think they are a little bit juiced because it's an Altamirano fight. But this one's going to be a fun fight to watch. But look at that 38% distance striking defense for Dos Santos. Look at that 32% accuracy. That's very low. 0 for 5 on his takedown attempts. 0% takedown defense on the one attempt against. Now, of course, it's against Manuel Kopp. I mean, a much higher level of competition on short notice. But both these guys Dos Santos is still very young, and he can absolutely be improving, and he's at a great camp, and he's got great people around him to help him do that and formulate a style that's going to, that's going to let him fight in a way where he accentuates his positives, which is the toughness, the volume, the good conditioning, and the ability to just absolutely drag his opponents into a violent fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fight's going to be very fun from a fan perspective. From a betting perspective, I'm probably going to stay away. I'm going to sit back and watch this one. I mean, this line's, it's kind of wild to me. Minus 300 now. Money just came in on Felipe Dos Santos. Victor Altamirano is plus 250. I just don't think there's much of a skill gap here other than Felipe Dos Santos went out there and maybe outperformed his expectations against Kopp. Other than that, Altamirano's not a terrible. I'm not the highest Altamirano fan out there, but he's not terrible. He's kind of solid, well-rounded everywhere. So minus 300. I don't like it. I'm going to pick him to win. I love the volume he brings to the table, like his style. I think he can do more over 15 minutes, but minus 300 in a fight that I do think goes to decision, and the odds makers especially do. Minus 240 to the over 2.5 rounds, and that is because both these guys are next level tough. Dos Santos not getting finished by Manuel Kopp after eating a ton of strikes was super impressive, and Altamirano's tough as well. So I think this goes to decision, and I think it's probably a Felipe Dos Santos semi-competitive win where he's doing more over 15.
Yeah, I can't wait for this fight. I want to be agnostic early in the week as to I don't really care who wins. I want to know what I think the stylistic read of this fight is, and I'm looking at car crash between two durable guys. So that could be a little bit, there could be some variance there. So probably, I mean, I'm not saying just probably dog or pass. I'm not laying minus 300 on Felipe dos Santos, dude. No chance. So I would much rather be on the Altamirano side, but I need to look much deeper into Felipe dos Santos's tape.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I'll tell you that. I was not impressed at all. But the Manel Cop fight, that I was impressed there. But other than that, he's getting some. He's going to close fights with some of these other guys. I don't know, but at the same time, he's only 23, so I think he is getting better. All right, Weezy. Speaking of phony, we got Denise Bondar going against Luis Rodríguez. We got Denise Bondar, 31 years old, 5'6" with a 69-inch reach. Luis Rodríguez, 24 years old, 5'6" with a 65-inch reach. We got Rodríguez is going to be 7 years younger, same height, and then it's going to be Bondar with a 4-inch reach advantage. Luis Rodríguez 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He fought on the Contender Series back in 2020 against Jerome Rivera, lost that fight by decision. As far as Denise Bondar, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He lost to Malcolm Gordon in his debut, and then he lost to Carlos Hernandez by should have been a knock. Kind of a weird situation. End of the 3rd round, there was like a clash of heads with the slam, and then Altamirano or Carlos Hernandez viciously finished him and ended up going to decision. But yeah, it ended up being called a decision there, even though he got just completely knocked out. Weird situation there. But anyway, I saw the lines on this, Weezy, and I saw Denise Bondar was a favorite. And I was like, Denise Bondar is a favorite in the UFC. This guy, Luis Rodríguez, has to suck. I mean, how can Bondar be a favorite against anybody in the division at this point? And I went and watched Rodríguez. I went and watched the Jerome Rivera fight, which was 4 years ago. I kind of thought he won that fight. It was a very close fight, and I was kind of impressed with him. But it was every fight after that where I was actually very impressed. I think his striking's starting to finally come a long way. I was really impressed with his scrambling ability, his grappling game, submission game, takedown defense looks good, can wrestle a little bit in his own right. He's now starting to flash power. I think Rodríguez is improving leaps and bounds since that Contender Series fight, and rightfully so. I mean, this guy was 20 years old at the time on the Contender Series. You're bound to expect improvements. As far as Denise Bondar, the record on paper looks pretty good. 14-4, is that right? I thought it was better than that.
So remember when I was saying that they had removed fights because we were talking about how trash the regional scene competition was.
Yeah.
If you go back to the stat diggers, you will see a different record because they have taken fights off of his record because he was fighting against such non-competitive, non-professional fighters on the regional scene. They've removed fights from his record, Brady.
I mean, that makes sense though. I'm looking at some of these fights, like I think like 8 or 9 like guys that don't even have a win. And it wasn't too long ago he fought an 0-2 guy, and that was like a couple fights ago he fought an 0-2 guy.
Yeah.
Back in 2019, Sergey Kupin. So, yeah, I mean, kind of getting fraud vibes as well. Getting submitted by Malcolm Gordon was not a good look. The Carlos Hernandez fight, it was probably 1-1 going into the third round, completely gassed out, had nothing left, and then got kind of finished late there. I don't know. I feel like this is a fight where I kind of like Rodríguez here. I kind of like anybody against Bondar, but I was really impressed with what I saw from Rodríguez. Maybe I was expecting like the worst of the worst because he is the underdog here, but I think this guy is good and improving. Super young, 24 years old. So Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight? Do you think Dennis Bondar finally gets in the win column here?
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to get it against Luis Rodríguez, but the thing about Rodríguez, he's 7 years younger than Denise, and he's more experienced. They have the same amount of pro fights, but Denise fighting pretzel benders while Luis is fighting better guys in Lux. Is a decent Mexican promotion. And he's 16-2. He's got 55 more minutes of total cage time compared to Denise in 2.5 years less as a pro. And he's already fought on the Contender Series at the age of 20. This guy's career is 6 years long, but he's got 18 professional fights. So Luis has stayed very active. And when you watch this guy fight, you don't see anything spectacular really out of him, but he's scrappy. He's down to throw down. He wrestles well. He's a pretty good submission grappler, and he's got nice hands. Not great kicks. He's really more of a primarily of a boxer, but I think the total package is pretty good, and you're getting the fighter that's 7 years younger. You're getting the fighter that's actually more experienced as a pro and has been much busier as a pro as well. Bondar coming off being pretty severely injured in the Malcolm Gordon fight, comes back against Carlos Hernandez. And Hernandez, won that fight pretty cleanly. But still, I bet on Hernandez that fight. When I was watching that fight, I kind of said to myself, Brady, I said, Bondar's not looking too bad here. He won one of those first 2 rounds. He's competitive. He can grapple. He can wrestle a little bit. He can strike, and he's pretty aggressive in his own right. So, in this particular matchup, I don't want to be calling Bondar like a fraud just because we got a lot more to learn about Luis Rodríguez, and the wins over Angel Rodriguez, Jamie Londino, Victor Moreno, Cesar Vasquez, Paul Marquez. They're solid wins against guys with decent regional scene records, but when you watch the fights, they're not phenomenal, level of opponents here. While Bondar's last 2 opponents are Carlos Hernandez and Malcolm Gordon, guys who have some UFC fights. So, it's a little bit of a step up here, honestly, to go up to Bondar for Rodriguez, but I like everything I see. I think it's going to be a fairly competitive fight, though. But I'm leaning Rodriguez. I'll take the younger guy that's more experienced here. That I don't see a lot of weaknesses in his game, and it's Mexico versus the Ukraine. You know who the crowd's going to be behind.
Yeah, you'd think, right? Yeah, it could play out close. I just thought it was funny seeing Denise Bondar as a favorite. That's all. And that's interesting. You thought the Hernandez fight was a little bit closer. Like I picked Bondar, and I was like ashamed the entire time for picking him. I mean, I guess there were some competitive moments, but I was ashamed with that pick. Probably one of my most ashamed picks in a while. That Bondar pick.
But I had a bet on Hernandez, and sometimes we're a little bit harder on the fighters that we bet on.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted Hernandez to go out there and dick saw him, but it didn't necessarily happen, in that knockout at the end, there was definitely a clash of heads, but the clash of heads happened after Bondar's head bounced off the canvas because it was a beautiful takedown that set up that clash of heads that wound up finishing the fight. But either way, unanimous decision, 3rd round knockout, still a W for Carlos Hernandez, and Bondar's 0-2 in the UFC. And now he's getting Luis Lazy Boy Rodriguez here. And this man is not that lazy. 24 years old, and he's got 18 fights. So, he couldn't be that lazy, right, Brady? His conditioning's pretty good. He stays active, and he's good in 3rd rounds of fights too. So 3-2 record as a pro in decisions, and one of those losses comes to Jerome Rivera on Contender Series. And like I agree with you, I thought he won that fight.
One thing to mention is Rodriguez is coming down a weight class. So he's fought at Flyweight only once in his career, and it was on the Contender Series. And then the rest of his fights are Bantamweight. This fight is at Flyweight, so he's cutting down to Flyweight for the first time in a while.
Okay, yeah, and that's when you're 24, you always got to keep in mind that these guys might not be able to make Flyweight when they're 27. It might be a really bad weight cut for them. So that's something we might want to see this kid on the scales.
Yeah, the only problem with that is I don't know if this line's going to be at plus money for long. It's already moved quite a bit, I believe. And somebody said in the chat this line did open up plus 160 for Rodriguez, which is crazy. Said he smashed it. There you go. Good bet there. 140 people watching, only 31 likes. Shame. Let's get those likes up, guys. All right. Should be an interesting fight. That was the second phony of the 3 phonies on this card. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have Claudio Puelles going against Fares Ziam. You got Puelles, 27 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach. Ziam, 26 years old, 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. We got Ziam, he's a 1 year younger, going to have a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. Claudio Puelles, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He had a decision win against Marcus Mariano, decision win against Jordan Levitt, submission win against Chris Grutzmacher, submission win against Clay Guida, and then a knockout loss to Dan Hooker. Weezy, is Dan Hooker a bum?
Nope. Nope. I think
That
we
was
both established that.
That was incredible. Dan Hooker was minus 150 against Claudio Poyas. He looked minus 10,000. I mean, that was amazing. So shout out to Dan Hooker for that. Yeah, but terrible performance from Claudio Poyas. But up until then, he looked good. I mean, he's going out there getting submissions. Wrestling's been looking better. But yeah, that was a terrible performance against Dan Hooker. Tough matchup though. As far as I am, he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Jamie Malarkey. Decision win against Vander Meany. Submission loss to Terrence McKinney. Decision win against Michael Figlak, and then a decision win against Jai Herbert. Striker versus grappler matchup, simple as that. For what it's worth, Ziam has been submitted, I think in all 4 of his losses. Like, this guy has been submitted a ton, which could be a potential concern here if this fight does hit the mat at some point. But yeah, I see why Ziam's the favorite here. He has really good takedown defense. I think it's, much improved at this point. And then on the feet, it's like not even competitive whatsoever. So I guess it all comes down to whether or not Claudio is able to get this fight down the mat. If he does, potentially alive for a sub. If not, Ziam probably wins a clear decision here. So interesting fight here. Ziam's a pretty big favorite, which is kind of interesting considering he has been submitted so much. So I feel like people are very low on Claudio Poyas after that Dan Hooker loss. I mean, that was a terrible look. Pulling guard, rolling for submissions, just a horrible look there. So yeah, I think Ziam is the rightful favorite, but I'm not sure I want to lay minus 205 here. Because if this fight does hit the mat, whether Poyas does get a takedown or if this fight ends up on the ground in general, Poyas is going to be live against, most guys in the division. His grappling's incredible, but that's about it. So Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight here?
Yeah, it's as striker versus grappler as you can really get. Perez Zams has phenomenal kickboxing. His jab is just beautiful. It's not lazy. It comes right back to his chin every time he throws it. He's accurate on the feet at 44%. His distance striking defense, Brady's 70%. I mean, this guy is a really, really effective minute winner with his efficient, precise, technical kickboxing that he brings. 3-inch reach advantage, 3 inches taller here, even a little bit younger is for SCM. But 3 of his 4 pro losses do come by submission. And Claudio Puelles is a guy that's going to, try to sell out for the submissions. And he'll put himself in bad positions to try to do that, but that's what he's good at. I had a bet in the Fares ZM Jai Herbert fight that fight would end under 2.5 rounds. And at no point during that fight was that bet anywhere even remotely close to cashing. And here I am thinking about doing it again, Brady. I don't want to bet violence here, right? Now, Fares Ziam doesn't look like he could finish a sandwich on the feet.
No.
But he's a way better striker than Claudio Puelles is. And unlike Jai Herbert, who just kind of pushed Fares against the fence for the entire fight, I think Puelles is going to be looking for leg locks. He might get himself put into a bad position where Fares can knock him out with ground and pound. And if he does try to go sell out for leg locks and doesn't get it in the first 2 rounds, maybe Fares knocks him out late, but I don't know, maybe a finish only prop on Puelles here because he's such a big dog. I think he's the far more dangerous fighter, especially with his submission game. And knowing that Puelles is 3-0 to the sub in the UFC and that Fares Ziam in his career is 4-3 to the sub. So 3 of his 4 losses by submission. We know that Puelles has an avenue to finish by submission, and Puelles, 2 of his 2 losses at the UFC level, both by knockout. For SCM, 5-0 to the knockout in his pro career. We got Puelles with a negative 2.59 distance striking differential. Ziam with a positive 1.59, but the power just doesn't seem to be there for Fares. Puelles by sub should be a pretty good line this week. Probably get better than plus 300.
Yeah, I mean, he's sub or bust. I don't see Poyas obviously winning by knockout, and I don't see him really winning by decision either. So yeah, the sub for Poyas could be a good look. Is Poyas finish only potential look? Yeah, I think so. Could be plus money. Yeah, Ziam just doesn't really seem like he wants to finish anybody at all. So yeah, I don't know what I'm doing yet with this fight. Like I said, I get why Ziam's the favorite. In theory, should be able to stuff takedowns, but if Poyas is able to get this fight down on the mat, it's going to get very interesting very fast. Terrence McKinney kind of ran through Ziam on the mat, which Terrence McKinney is a very good grappler, but so is Poyas. So, yeah, I think Poyas is potentially live here. It is definitely hard to trust him after how he looked against Dan Hooker, though.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also this recency bias is something that we have to take advantage of as long-term, gamblers who are trying to be long-term plus EV bets.
Yep.
That's what you do when Puellis is plus 120 to Dan Hooker, right? Plus 120 to Dan Hooker, and now he's plus 170 to Fares Ziam, who doesn't really have any impressive wins thus far. A majority decision over Luigi Vendramini, a cage pusher's delight, unanimous decision win against Jamie Malarkey that he probably didn't deserve. A win by unanimous decision over Michael Figlak, a win by a very underwhelming win by unanimous decision over Jai Herbert. I mean, and he's what? Minus 200?
Dude, I haven't watched a Zion fight and been like, that was a fun fight. That was a fun fight. I haven't seen a fun fight from Fares Ziam yet.
And even his debut against Madge was horrible. Yeah, I mean, Madge just pushed him up against the cage for 15 full minutes, and that was a decision loss for Ziam in that fight. So you're right, man. Fares is not in exciting fights, and he's not putting a stamp on his wins. So, the Peruvian in Mexico, the crowd's going to be behind him over the Frenchman. I'll tell you that right now. So, maybe this is a decent plus money spot for Puellas here by submission. And hell, he can win a decision too, Brady. Look at Ziam, 15% control time for, 35% control time allowed. And then Puellis on the other side, 43% control time for, 16% control time allowed. So not only is he the better submission grappler, but he's also the guy that's winning more minutes with his wrestling against the guy in Ziam who's losing some minutes with his wrestling. So there are some avenues here for Claudio.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, this picture might have swung me to the Puellas side here. Look how handsome Claudio Puellas is in that picture right there.
Yeah, he's taking his job as an analyst seriously. He shows up not only with the experience of a fighter, but with like the clothing and the drip of a star. Let's face it. Peru, stand up. Claudio Puelli is going to be looking to get a win as an underdog here against the underwhelming Fares Ziam.
So Puellas by sub could be definitely in play. Probably get a good price on it. Maybe not on Bet Online, but maybe like a FanDuel or DraftKings potentially. We'll see. What is the ratio of CLV trophies to UFC dollars? Any idea?
That is 0. There isn't a ratio, my friend, because you see, if you're not cashing the CLV bets, but that's the point. We got to make ourselves feel better sometimes with the bets that don't cash by saying we got the best number, but then everybody else got worse numbers and they lost worse than we did. But it is a $0 ratio.
Yeah, but you can buy a trophy and flaunt it to everybody. That makes you feel good. You want to know why I bought this? You know what the bet was that I made me buy this?
Which one? I forgot.
It was Zhang Weili, Amanda Lemos fight doesn't go to decision. DraftKings opened it up at minus 150. It closed at like minus 350 to minus 400. Zhang Weili proceeded to beat the living crap out of Lemos for 25 minutes. Was it a good bet at minus 150? Oh yeah, it was. So got to cash the CLV, and I cashed that CLV in, and I bought myself a trophy. These are only like $20. $20 trophy. You can customize it however you'd like.
Closing line. I love that.
It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
You got to take pictures with that trophy every time you have a losing bet where you beat the line, and just with a big smile on your face, like you didn't lose money,
Yeah, it feels good. Yeah. So yeah, I bought that. I bought the Liang Na wigs. I like to put money into this show. I like to buy things there.
Let me give you the best on Pub Sports Radio.
Yes, 100%. All right, let's get Claudio Puellas off the screen here. It's starting to freak me out. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Oh boy, a fight that is it going to happen? We'll have to see. Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda 8. We got Edgar Chairez, 27 years old, 5'7" with a 72-inch reach. Daniel Lacerda da Silva, 27 years old, 5'6" with a 70-inch reach. Same age. Chairez 1-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage. Chairez, he is 2-1 no contest in his last 5 fights. A decision loss to Clayton Carpenter. He had a submission win against Gianni Di Chara Vasquez, made his debut against Tetsura Taira, lost that fight by decision. And then obviously the no contest with Daniel Lacerda da Silva, his last fight. And then Daniel Lacerda da Silva, he had a no contest his last time against Chairez. He lost to Vergara by knockout, Altamirano by knockout, a submission loss to Figueiredo, and then a knockout loss to Jeff Molina. I think Lacerda he's like 0-4-1 in his last 5 fights, or 0-5-1 even. I mean, this guy can't get a win to save his life, but maybe he's going to try to here. I have a public service announcement, Weezy. You know, Edgar Chairez is a big favorite, -330. Silva is +255. My public service announcement is you don't have to bet every fight. I mean, you can pass. You don't have to bet on Daniel Lacerda. You don't have to bet on this guy. It's just hard. It's just hard. Like how does Lacerda win this fight? Obviously, probably knocking out Chairez, who's never been knocked out. Lacerda is very dangerous early, but like, and we're putting him in elevation. Like, this can't end well. Like, this guy's going to be gassed out on the walkout, Weezy. So yeah, I mean, it's my prediction hasn't changed. It's Chairez. I called the sub in their last fight. It didn't pan out. Shout out to Chris Tione. But yeah, same thing. Sub Chairez round 2. So I like the under 1.5 rounds. It's probably even generous where it's at. I think it's on like -200 or something. That's pretty generous for a Lacerda fight. And then I'll be looking at Chairez maybe round 2 as well. So yeah, Weezy, give me Chairez. Hopefully this fight happens because it's been rescheduled like 50 times at this point.
This fight reminds me of you remember when Ankalaev was fighting Kudalaba, and like they had to call off the first fight. Then the second fight, everybody wanted to see this fight. You know, the all-action Kudalaba against Ankalaev. And Ankalaev hits him with some big shots early, and Kudalaba's kind of playing possum. And Jason Herzog thought he was hurt, and he wasn't hurt, and he stopped the fight too soon. And then they were like, oh, we got to make this rematch. And then 3 consecutive rematches got canceled because of COVID. Right. So these guys were trying to fight each other for like a year and a half, and it just never happened. And then finally, the second fight happened. Ankalaev just starches him in the first. Right. And it was like everybody knew that was going to be the result anyway. But we had to go through 6 iterations of planned fights in order to find out what we all already knew. And that was that Magomed Ankalaev is better than Ion Cutelaba. And I think this is what's happening here. You know, these guys have been supposed to fight how many times? And only one of them has happened. And it's a no contest where Chairez was clearly going to win the fight. And here we are again. And I know that we always have to be careful, Brady. We always have to be careful that the rematches very rarely look like the first fight. But yeah, your public service announcement on not betting on Daniel Lacerda is probably something that I'm going to be heeding this week. And yeah, maybe that under 1.5 is a parlay piece. That might be the way. I don't hate the price. I mean, we're seeing some of these under 1.5s open up at -350. So when you see -180, -200, you're like, wow, it's actually, we're getting conditioned into thinking that's a bettable number for under 1.5s. And it might actually be for this fight. So, you know, I mean, we've broken this fight down so many times. You know, I think it's just more, it's better to just talk about the narratives here, because I think we've already kind of ad nauseum went over the technical, you know, parts of this fight. So I'm thinking it ends early, like most other people do. But I'm you don't have to bet on every fight. That is for damn sure.
No, like obviously you don't want to bet Chairez at -330. But on the same side, I will never bet on Daniel Lacerda. I'm a big fan of him, huge fan. He is he's the flyweight Liang Na, right? Like he's not going to win a fight, but hey, he's going to go in there. He's going to put on fun and exciting fights for the first 3 minutes. and then he's going to gas out and get finished every time. It's fun to watch. It's entertaining. And I think that's why the UFC's keeping him around. I hope they give him 10 fights. Why not give this guy 10 fights, 10 finished losses? All the fights are fun. I can get down with that.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you, man. Keep him in the UFC. He puts on really fun fights. And somebody uses him as a stepping stone almost every time, shaves his ass either in the first or second round. And they're always fun to watch. And it's always, at the end of the day, about putting on fan-friendly, exciting fights that build the brand of the sport overall. And this guy's going to be in fun fights.
It's crazy, though. I mean, Victor Altamirano knocked this guy out in the first round.
Yeah. That's and Altamirano's over is like minus 200 because he hasn't finished anybody else but Lacerda. Like, he beat Seven Shades of shit out of him. He pounded his head through the canvas.
Yeah, and then he got submitted by Francisco Figueiredo. Oh gosh, it's not good. So yeah, we'll see if this fight even happens. If it does, it's gonna be violent. That's for sure. Every Lacerda fight is violent.
Absolutely. So it's a fun fight that I'm probably not going to be betting on.
Sounds good to me. All right. Next we have, I believe, so Mateus Mendonça going against Jesus Aguilar. We got Mateus Mendonça. He's 25 years old, 5'6" with a 71-inch reach. Aguilar, 27 years old, 5'4" with a 62-inch reach. We got Mateus Mendonça. He's 2 years younger, 2-inch height advantage, and a 9-inch reach advantage. Jesus Aguilar is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut against Tatsuro Taira. Lost that fight by sub, and then he beat Shannon Ross by knockout. As far as Mateus Mendonça, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut, I believe, on short notice against Javid Basharat. Lost that fight by decision. Got a knockout loss to Nate Maness in his last fight, and then got a knockout win on the Contender Series, I think in the very first minute of that fight. So yeah, it was hilarious. I was live in attendance for Jesus Aguilar versus Shannon Ross. It was a moment that I'll never forget. I mean, it was hilarious because Aguilar has a 62-inch reach, never knocked out anybody ever. And not only does he knock out Shannon Ross, he knocks him out with the first punch that lands, flatlines Shannon Ross. And at first I was excited. I was celebrating because I had a bet on Aguilar inside the distance. And then I kind of felt bad. I mean, poor Shannon Ross, that was a brutal knockout loss. So That was crazy, but in terms of Mateus Mendonça, this is a guy who I had high hopes for, man. I mean, he had a great Contender Series win. Very fun and exciting fighter. Trains out of Shoot to Box, Diego Lima. Has that really cool blue hair. But, in his 2 fights, you had that decision loss to Basharat. No shame in that. But there was shame in his last fight against Nate Maness. Just making very questionable decisions. Ending up on bottom, rolling for a leg in that Maness fight and just getting his head pounded through the canvas, accepting bottom position, getting TKO. That was a terrible look, and went through and watched a lot of Mendonça fights. And yeah, he does make a ton of mistakes on the mat. He's a submission over position. He can lose position, end up on bottom. I didn't like seeing that. But yeah, he's a great striker. Again, has that really good blue hair that I like. As far as Jesus Aguilar, I think the 62-inch reach is a problem. I think in this fight, the striking is heavily in favor of Mateus Mendonça, especially with that 9-inch reach advantage. And I think the grappling is honestly going to be pretty competitive. I think both guys make a ton of mistakes. Both guys are submission over position. We've seen Aguilar lose position a lot of times. We've seen Mendonça lose position a lot of times. Both guys very solid grapplers. So I think the grappling might even, cancel each other out here. But I heavily favor Mendonça in terms of that striking with that reach. So I feel like Mendonça could be a good look here. I don't think he's the smartest fighter in the world, but I think he's the more skilled, well-rounded fighter in this matchup. So I like Mendonça here. Haven't bet it yet, but Weezy, you do have a bet on this fight.
Yeah, I parlayed Mendonça with Naimov and got it a little bit earlier when he was a lot closer to even money. And yeah, you would think if you just watch the Shannon Ross fight that Jesus Aguilar is some murderous power puncher. I can assure you he is not. That was just Shannon Ross. But yeah, this is, like you, Brady, I was very high on Mendonça coming into the UFC. He beat Pedro Nobre on the regional scene. He is another shoot box Diego Lima guy. Really fun to watch, very aggressive. But what I saw in the Nobre fight, Nobre's a veteran that was fighting in the UFC about 10 years ago. Guy with over 30 professional fights. Mendonça fought him when he was 23. And he wins one round with cage pushing in his clinch. He wins another round with his striking, and then he wins another round with his wrestling and his top control. And I was like, whoa, man. To win a decision over a veteran like Pedro Nobre at the age of 23 is very impressive. But to do it not just like doing the one thing that you're best at, but to show a complete mixed martial arts skill set, that was really impressive. And then he gets that quick win on Dana White's Contender Series against Ajim. And then you can tell that the UFC is like, look, this kid Mendoza's got a future. They gave him Javid Basharat in his debut. And I don't think they would have done that, Brady, unless they thought that this kid could handle himself. And it was a decision. Mendoza had some moments in that fight. I mean, but Javid is on a different level in terms of experience and in terms of just being well-rounded and well-tested compared to Mateus. And then Mendoza cuts down to 125, which is interesting. So Nate Maness, his first fight at 125, first time making that cut, as far as I know. And he's rolling for leg locks, getting put in bad spots. I didn't understand it. But then again, he's fighting a guy, and the UFC has a way of doing that where, you're like, oh, I'm going to go down a weight class. And then they give you a guy when you go down a weight class who's, like a former lightweight, for Christ's sake, in Nate Maness. So now you move down, and then you get a even bigger guy than you got in your previous fight in Basharat. So now with Aguilar, he's moving down to 125, and he's going to get that size advantage, Brady, they didn't have in the last fight. And I think that's what sets this apart, is that Aguilar's a pretty good wrestler. He can win some minutes on top. He's got a fantastic guillotine choke. So if you shoot in sloppy on him, he can absolutely lock it up. With those short ass arms, when he gets them locked, arm in, he can finish you with that. And but I like Mendoza's striking a lot better, and I think he can probably win minutes in the clinch in this fight if he wants to slow it down a little bit. If he wants to take a little bit of a break at elevation, that could be a possibility. I think he can get takedowns, but I really, really think that if he just wants to keep this fight on the feet, he should be able to do that with his reach and just pick this guy apart from range.
LPX saying Aguilar is going to overwhelm Mendoza. Man, I don't see that happening. Aguilar's not a striker. I know he knocked out Shannon Ross, but I mean,
he's not a great striker, and he's at a 9-inch reach disadvantage. But when you look at those numbers that are on the screen there, Brady, under Mendoza, look at it's just red.
Yeah, but it's skewed. Red. It's skewed. I mean, he fought Basharat and in the Maness fight, obviously.
Yeah, but 29% accuracy. That's like can't hit water if he fell out of a boat range. And then 33.7 distance striking defense is like human punching bag range, So yeah, I tend to agree with him there. But that's gonna, like you said, Jesus Aguilar's striking is nowhere near Javid Basharat and Nate Maness. And when he took that step down and he fought Ashika Jim, you saw him just absolutely flatline that dude.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, yeah, if Aguilar wins the striking exchanges, I'll be wrong, but I don't see it happening. Maybe I think Aguilar can get takedowns, absolutely, though, in this matchup. He can definitely get takedowns, I think. But we shall see. Let's see where the line is at now. What line did you get Mendoza at?
I would have to look. Let me look at my bet online.
Maybe you'll get some CLV going.
Let's hope.
He is currently
minus 135.
Yep. He is currently minus 140. So cash your CLV. I can still get minus 138 though, which is nice. And then Aguilar's plus 120. And this is the only fight on the card where they don't have a total.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I wonder why.
Doesn't really seem like that hard to put a total out on this one.
Well, there's probably something that's keeping them from it. I don't know. Maybe just somebody left work early. They're like, hey, the bell rang at 5. I'm out of here. I'll put that line out tomorrow.
Yep, that makes sense. So we'll probably get it tomorrow when they get back to work. All right, let's keep moving on. Weezy, we have a tough fight here, in my opinion. We got Cristian Quiñonez going against Raoni Barcelos. We got Quiñonez, 27 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. Barcelos, 36 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. Quiñonez is going to be 9 years younger. Quiñonez is going to have a 1-inch height advantage and then a 3-inch reach advantage. Quiñonez is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Khalid Taha, won that fight by knockout, then got club and subbed by Kung Ho Kong. As far as Hani Barcelos, 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Decision loss to Tamir Valiev, decision loss to Victor Henry, a decision win against Trevin Jones, knockout loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, and then a decision loss to Kyler Phillips. I'll say this, if this fight was like 2 years ago, I would be max betting Hayani Barcelos here at -170. It's weird seeing him at this price tag. Like, this is a guy in Hayani who's typically a very big favorite in a lot of his fights. Against Victor Henry, the guy was like -500. I think he's a pretty big favorite against Valiev as well. I remember he was -1,000 in one of his fights in the past also. I mean, this is a guy that's typically a very good big favorite, and that's because he's a very good fighter. BJJ black belt, wrestling background, incredible striking, incredible volume. But the problem with Barcelos at this point is he's 36, almost 37 years old at bantamweight. And quite frankly, I think he's lying about his age. I think maybe you add 10 years onto that and you get the age of Hani Barcelos, because he does not look 36 to me. So that's a concern. I mean, the age is a concern. The durability is a concern. We are in elevation, Weezy. The cardio of Barcelos has always been iffy. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that really sketch me out here. But like I said, this fight was 2 years ago. Yeah, it's Barcelos all day. I mean, how does he lose to Cristian Quiñonez, a guy that just got club and subbed by Kung Ho Kong, right? But I don't know, man. I have a weird feeling about this fight. Cristian Quiñonez, he's the younger guy. He's going to probably have the cardio advantage here, and he's dangerous. He has a lot of power, so maybe he's able to go out there and hurt Barcelos. I get why Barcelos is the favorite, but I can't trust this guy at this point. I really can't. You know, I used to be so high on Barcelos. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. So, Weezy, weird fight here. Help me out with this one.
Yeah, this is a weird one. With Cristian, you're getting a guy that's almost 10 years younger. He's like 9 years younger than Barcelos, and he's got that 3-inch reach advantage. And then you look, and they both got 22 pro fights. You know, so even though Barcelos has obviously been fighting at a higher level, you know, the guy's fought guys in the UFC whose combined records are 32 and 23. So, you know, he's fighting a good level of competition there. But Cristian Quiñonez has been around for a long time. This guy's been turned pro at the age of 17. So you got the guy that's so much younger and has a commensurate amount of cage minutes, you know, in terms overall. I mean, Barcelos has really only got 38 more minutes than him, and that's in, you know, a year and a half more. But we know that Barcelos has been hurt a lot. You know, before that guy could barely get out to fight. Now that he's finally healthy, he's like 34, 35, 36, and he's kind of starting to see that downturn. You know, 1-4 in your last 5, Brady, like you mentioned. I don't know what to think of this fight either, because Cristian is a fun fighter to watch. A lot of KOs, but a really tricky submission game to go along with those KOs. And Barcelos, though, obviously is just a much more tested fighter. And even when you look at Barcelos still fighting now, you know, he's very good. His boxing is very good. He can still wrestle and grapple with anybody in the division. I'd love to see him be a little more active with the wrestling, man. I think that's where he should be trying to win minutes these days. You know, if I could count on Barcelos to go out here and shoot 7 or 8 takedowns against Quiñonez, yeah, I'd bet him, man, because Barcelos is a phenomenal grappler, and you can still out-grapple these youngsters when you're old. You know, it's the speed on the feet. It's the ability to be able to get out of the way of the big shot. That's the stuff I think that starts to elude you a little bit more as you get older, a little bit slower. But your grappling technique, your ability to be able to set traps and set up what you do best, that is still with you. And I think that's where Barcelos should be able to win this fight. But it's one of those things where if you're betting on Barcelos here, you have to be well aware of the fact that this guy is 36 years old. He's 1-4 in his last 5, and he doesn't look like the same version of himself. He still looks like he's good everywhere, but now you're starting to realize, oh, he doesn't really have the knockout power anymore. He's a great submission grappler, but he's not actively going out there looking for takedowns all that often. So can I count on him to mix in the wrestling when he has that advantage? The answer to that is pretty much no. He still only averages only 1.8 takedowns per 15 minutes. You'd like to see a lot more than that. So I have to ride with Barcelos here. I think he's the more complete fighter, the more well-tested fighter. But Cristian Quiñonez is younger, hungrier, in front of the home crowd. I don't know who's going to win this fight, but I would probably have to pick Barcelos.
Yeah, I think I might pick Quiñonez. I want to look into it a little bit more. Barcelos just arrived in Mexico City yesterday. That's
not
I mean,
good.
this guy's cardio to begin with is sketchy. He's getting older. The durability's shaky at best at this point. I think Quiñonez, I don't think he's that great, but I mean, at this point of Barcelos' career, I think he's live to maybe land something big. Like, Quiñonez does have power. Knocking out Khalid Taha, that was impressive. Like, Khalid Taha has a brick for a head. How'd he knock that guy out? That was incredible. And then he got club and sub by Kung Ho Kong. So I don't know. I think the under in this fight makes a ton of sense, especially with it being at elevation. Both these guys are finishers. Both these guys can be finished. Like, Quiñonez has been finished a good amount in his own right?
He's been finishing 100% of his losses, Brady. And if you want to really make a nice comparison here, how about comparing Kyung Ho Kong to Hani Barcelos? They're similar fighters. They're very well-rounded. They're very experienced. They both have power on the feet, and they both have tricky submission games. And Kong can win minutes with his grappling just like Hani can. And I think that Hani Barcelos is a nice comp in terms of the same guy that in Kong that just beat Cristian Quiñonez and made it look pretty easy.
Yeah, I think somebody's getting served here probably. So I think the
I
under
agree.
is probably what I would look at. It is plus money it's plus money on every book right now. So the under 2.5 opened up at plus 160. I'm guessing Propaholic got on that one.
Yeah, I think he even got plus 170, to be honest with you. Yeah.
God,
I mean, okay. I kind of like it at plus 103 here at elevation. These guys are finishers, both of them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good look. But at plus 170, boy, I would have been very happy to get that line.
Yeah, but he wakes up at 8 o'clock. We don't.
Yeah, I don't know. That's well, good on him. The early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, I was actually up at 8 this morning, and I didn't even bother to look at the lines. I guess I should have. I guess I should have actually looked at the lines this morning, but I was taking care of the baby. Plus money under for these two. I like it. I might have to bet that very shortly.
Agreed.
Sounds good to me. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Manuel Torres going against Chris Duncan. Speaking of violence, dude, holy crap. Manuel Torres is a very violent fighter. He's 28 years old, 5'10" with a 73-inch reach. Chris Duncan, 30 years old, 5'10" with a 71-inch reach. Torres, 2 years younger, same height, and Torres with a 2-inch reach advantage. Manuel Torres, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Frank Camacho, won that fight by knockout. He fought on the Contender Series, right? Against England? Or was that not? No, it wasn't. I don't think it was on the Contender Series. But I remember watching that fight.
It was.
Oh, it was?
It was, okay. Yes.
All right. And he knocked him out, probably in the first round. And then he knocked out Nicholas Mota with one of the most devastating elbows I've seen in a very long time. Poor Nicholas Mota. I mean, that was tough to watch. As far as Chris Duncan, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, had a Contender Series loss against Slava Borshev, second round KO. Ends up beating Charlie Campbell on the Contender Series in the first round after getting dropped like 3 times. Ended up knocking out Charlie Campbell cold. Great comeback there. And then he beats Omar Morales and Yanal Ashmos both by decision. Manuel Torres, 16 fights, Weezy, 15 of them have ended in the first round. He's been out of the first round once, and that fight that did go out of the first round ended up going to decision. I don't even know what a Manuel Torres decision would even look like, but it did. It went 15 minutes there. Yeah, this is a guy that is, well, I think his nickname's, what's his nickname?
Loco.
Loco. Which I'm not the best at Spanish, but I believe that means crazy. And this guy has a crazy fighting style. He's going to walk forward. He's going to eat one to give one, and he has a ton of power. Both of his losses come inside the distance by submission in like the first minute of the fight. He has never been knocked out for what it's worth. Chris Duncan has, though. I do question the chin, the durability of Chris Duncan. I question the striking defense as well. Chris Duncan's very hittable. You see it right there. At distance, a 55% strike and defense. But for Torres, it's 51%, not much better, right? So both these guys are extremely hittable. Both these guys have a lot of power. Chris Duncan, I think in theory, may have a path here in terms of making this fight a little bit less exciting, pushing Torres against the cage, maybe taking him down. But yeah, at range, at distance, this fight's going to be an absolute banger. I can't wait for this one. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this?
I can't wait. Dude, Loco Torres is one of my favorite fighters, and Chris Duncan's made a really good account of himself thus far in the UFC as well. I mean, those fun fights with Borshev and Charlie Campbell on Dana White's Contender Series, and then having good performances, getting wins against Omar Morales and Yanal Ashmos, 7 takedowns, 18 attempts in 2 fights. So he's attempting 9 takedowns per 15 minutes and getting 3.5 of them. So this guy is very active with the offensive wrestling. Manuel Torres has stopped all 5 takedown attempts against him thus far at the UFC level. I hope this fight stays on the feet, because if it does, we get to see Manuel Torres at his best, and we get to see Chris Duncan at his most exciting. And this is a fight that I think the Mexican fans are going to be going bonkers for, because if Duncan doesn't go out with that game plan to slow it down, to clinch up, to try to take Manuel down and grind on him, if he doesn't do that, this fight is going to be so much fun to watch. I bet the under 1.5 rounds here at -170. It opened at actually plus money for some reason. I know Propaholic got on that as well. And this one here is already -200 for the under 1.5 rounds. And yeah, I mean, I think if this thing's on the feet, it's going to be a total barn burner. Manuel Torres is extremely dangerous at range. Very powerful. 6 wins by submission and 7 by KO. So if Chris starts shooting in and looking sloppy doing so, Manuel's got some really nice front chokes and some really nice length as well. So I like Torres here. I like Torres round 1, but I want to see where these lines open, because everybody knows that that's when Manuel is at his most dangerous, and Chris Duncan knows that as well. So I think that there is a good likelihood that Chris could try to slow this one down. But I think if he does, the crowd might be booing loud enough that whoever's reffing this fight might not let him slow it down for long. And if that's the case, he could get tired trying to grapple here and then wind up eating a big elbow or a big shot from Torres, who's just so dangerous and fun to watch on the feet. The way he stepped into that elbow on Moda, I think he stepped past Nick's feet. I mean, he stepped so far in on that and landed that so flush. I'm surprised Nick Moda doesn't look like a circus freak after eating that elbow, because that was one of the most violent things that I have seen in the UFC in a long time. And this is a very violent sport. So yeah, this is a great fight. I'm betting on violence. I have no problem laying juice on a violence bet in a Manuel Torres fight in Mexico at elevation. This is going to be a banger.
Yeah, my only concern about violence is kind of the Chris Duncan side. He's been making fights awfully boring. Like in Ashmos, he hurt I think his arm or his hand. He was injured in that fight, Ashmos, early on. I think maybe at the end of the first round. And Duncan really didn't try to push the finish. And then in the Morales fight, he kind of cage pushed. But I do like the under, and that's because I'm on the Torres side here. I think he has a ton of power. Chris Duncan has been hurt multiple times. I mean, he got dropped a couple times by Borshev. He got dropped a couple times by Charlie Campbell as well. And this guy Torres has a ton of power. And like you mentioned, if Duncan does go out there and cage push, maybe he does start to get tired. Let's see when Chris Duncan arrived. And I don't think it was too long ago. He arrived to Mexico City. I don't even see it. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't that. 10 days ago, Chris Duncan, 10 days ago.
That's good. That shows responsibility and planning there, because
Or was it 3
City.
days? Or was it 3 days ago? I don't know. Either way. Yeah, I like Torres by knockout. I'll be betting violence as well, but I'm probably going to bet the Torres KO1. I think I like that. KO1 too. I might look at that. We see the money line on Torres. He opened up -200. He's currently -125. Duncan opened up plus 170, currently plus 105. Yeah, Duncan may have a path. It's just I do think Torres has a good chance at catching him at some point. And then you said the under 1.5 is minus 200 now. It opened up at plus 100, which is ridiculous.
I can't believe it opened there. Yeah, I got it at minus 170. I'm pretty happy with that. It's a Manuel Torres fight. I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm expecting violence.
As you should be. Yeah, Oshma's had one hand for two. It was annoying there for the Chris Duncan fight. But all right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Yazmin Jauregui going against Sam Hughes. We got Jauregui, 24 years old, 5'3" with a 64-inch reach. Sam Hughes, 31 years old, 5'5" with a 64-inch reach. Jauregui, she is 7 years younger. It's going to be Sam Hughes with a 2-inch height advantage, same reach there. Yazmin Jauregui, she is 4-1 in her last 5 fights. She made her debut against Yazmin Lucindo, won that fight by decision, beat Estela Nunez by knockout, and then got starched in the first minute against Denise Gomes. As far as Sam Hughes, 3-2 in her last 5 fights. Decision loss to Luana Pinheiro. Decision win against Estela Nunez. Knockout win against Elise Reed. Decision loss against Piera Rodríguez. And then a decision win against Jacqueline Amarim. Weezy, take it away. Actually, I don't mind this fight. Don't take it off the card. Just take it away in terms of the breakdown. I don't hate the fight.
Yeah, this line is crazy wide right now. I mean, I think what is the line on this fight?
I think it's minus 500 now.
Oh my God! Look, Yazmin's a great fighter. Only 24 years old still. She'll be turning 25 a couple days after the fight. And Sam's 31, but still in her prime. Similar size between the two ladies. Sam will be a couple inches taller. Sam's a little bit more experienced, couple more fights overall, 70 more minutes in the cage overall, 4 more fights at the UFC level, about 70 more minutes of UFC cage time. She's fought the tougher competition at the UFC level. She's got the better conditioning here. And here she is, a plus 370 underdog to Yazmin Jauregui, and I thought we would get a better price on Yazmin's next fight after she got starched by Denise Gomes in the very first round, but boy, oh boy, was I wrong. And look, I think this line reflects what the MMA betting community thinks about Yazmin's skill set as a fighter. She really does look the part, Brady, and the striking looks like it's good. You see her mixing in the wrestling on the regional scene and stopping takedowns on the regional scene. So she can mix it in when she wants to, but she tends to prefer to keep fights standing, use her wrestling in reverse. And I think she's the cleaner striker here. But yeah, am I laying minus 450, minus 500 on a woman that's coming off a knockout? And then when you look at the win before, it was a freak win over Estela Nunez, a nasty injury. And then the win over Yazmin Lucindo, who was a 21-year-old debutante at that point. I don't know, man. Yazmin's a phenomenal fighter, and she's a very clean and technical boxer. I like everything that she brings to the table here, and I'll pick her to win. But I mean, this line just it's too wide.
I mean, you don't want to lay you don't want to lay 5 units to win one here?
5, my God, man. Wow. No, I don't. But Yazmin probably wins this fight. I just, they're not going to make it easy on us to cash from it, to make money from it. So, yeah, man, I'm interested to see where this goes, because at minus 500, it's already absurd. Look, Sam's more experienced. She's taller. She's fought more at the UFC level. She's fought the better brand of competition, and she has excellent conditioning too. And she's winning a bunch of minutes on the ground too. 33% control time for, only 10% control time allowed. If Jauregui comes in slipping or not feeling 100%, Sam can make this very uncomfortable for the people that lay the juice, this kind of juice on Jauregui's money line.
Oh yeah, the Estela Nunez, that wasn't the freak injury. She knocked Nunez out.
Oh, that's right. And that was in the next fight. But don't forget that Estela Nunez dropped her.
Yes, she did in the first round.
First round. Estela actually won the first round of that fight. So yeah, man, this is it's ridiculous where the money line is, but it does reflect the talent that Jauregui has at only 24 years old right now.
Yep, she's decent. Chin might be a concern. Holy crap. I mean, getting flatlined in 30 seconds and then Nunez knocking her down. But yeah, I mean, I got her too, but minus 500, just nothing really sticking out there. I'm curious to see where they put this total though. Like, what are they? Okay, so the under 2.5 is plus 215. Sam Hughes is tough as nails though, outside of the weird Tisha Torres situation, but I don't know. Jauregui is a decent finisher, and Jauregui's fights have finished. That total is to the under is kind of interesting, but not sure I'll get there. Not sure I'm touching this fight, to be honest. MMA Jesus has Sam confidently, the biggest dog on the card, confidently. I mean, at this price tag, why not, right? Why not? I think she probably loses, but you're getting plus 375.
It's just such a big number, man.
Yeah, it is. But nothing's wrong with passing as well. Nothing's wrong with passing. That's for sure. Any thoughts on it? Like you said, the money line's probably too wide. Any thoughts on the total?
Let me look at my prop template.
I know Jauregui has two for three finished, and then Sam Hughes a couple finished as well. The Torres fight finished. The Reed fight finished.
Yeah, it shows the over 2.5 at minus 300 and the under at plus 240. And at plus 240, it was perfectly priced. Now it's coming under because it's 2 of 3 Jauregui fights have finished under 2.5 rounds, but it's only 1 of 7 for Sam Hughes. So it's 30% overall. And at plus 240, you were looking at a 29% implied probability. So now that it's plus 215, you said?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just something to pass on.
Not necessarily, because 2 of 3 Jauregui fights, 66.67%, have finished under that number. So you never know. Maybe Sam lands a big shot because we've seen Yazmin get dropped a couple of times, and consequently, because Yazmin's such a big favorite, I mean, it's got to be in the cards that she just really beats up Sam at distance and maybe gets a stoppage herself. So not the worst look.
Where's Hughes training? Is she still at Fortis? I think.
Where's what?
I didn't. Oh, you cut out. Is Sam Hughes still training at Fortis MMA?
As far as I know, yes. She's been there for a long time.
Okay. So maybe the elevation could be a problem for her.
But she's a former steeplechase runner, so she's definitely always had phenomenal conditioning. But if she doesn't get out there and acclimate, she might rely on conditioning that's not going to be there for her because her body hasn't acclimated to the elevation. So that will actually be very important to look at.
We got Sean K. or it was confirmed a while ago that this is not Sean V. This is not Sean V. Which, by the way, I have a bone to pick with Sean V. Hopefully, I see him in the near future. Sean V was giving me crap yesterday, saying that Fluffy wasn't going to take down Roman Kopylov. He said, "Brady, that's a terrible take. Fluffy's not taking down Roman Kopylov." And I said, "Sean, are you on crack? What do you mean? What do you mean Fluffy's not taking down Roman Kopylov?" So I have a bone to pick with Sean V. But Sean K and him are two different people. He says, did you say that Sam has better cardio? I mean, I think both cardio should be fine, right?
Well, I think Sam's cardio has been proven at the UFC level much more than Yazmin Jauregui. That's for sure. I mean, there was one fight against Lucindo, and Lucindo was a short notice replacement for that fight. So I do see, and remember, outside of that fight, Yazmin had finished 7 of 9 wins. So watch Sam Hughes. She doesn't slow down either. And actually, she's won some fights late because she outpaces her opponent. And I like Sam's conditioning because the sport that she was doing before MMA was long distance running. And yeah, that's about as good as it gets for conditioning in terms of a base. So yeah, well, I'm not calling Yazmin like lacking in conditioning. I'm just saying that Sam's is a little more proven, in my opinion, at this point.
Yeah, that's fair to say. That's a fair take. We've seen it multiple times. She broke Elise Reed. She broke who's that fighter? Jacqueline Amarim. She broke her.
Yeah, but Jacqueline just she adrenaline dumped so huge in that fight. She came out in the second with just nothing left. But Sam could have gotten tired too, but she didn't.
Yep, 100%. So So yeah, Yazmin Jauregui is the biggest favorite on the card, minus 500. Nothing can go wrong. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Raul Rosas Jr. going against Ricky Turcios. We got Raul Rosas Jr. He's 19 years old, 5'9" with a 67-inch reach. Turcios, 30 years old, 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. Raul Rosas Jr., 11 years younger, same height, and then it's going to be Turcios with a 4-inch reach advantage. Rosas Jr., he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Jay Perrin, won that fight by first-round sub, lost the decision against Cristian Rodríguez, and then knocked out Terrence Mitchell in the first round. As far as Ricky Turcios, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Had that fight against Brady Heastan, tough finale, won that fight by decision. He lost to Ayman Zahabi by decision, and then he beat Kevin Natividad by decision. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good matchup for Raul Rosas Jr. here. You look at Ricky Turcios, his takedown defense is awful, man. I mean, Kevin Natividad, I'm actually 100% sure he's been cut. Was never really high on Kevin Natividad at all. Kevin Natividad went out there and took down Ricky Turcios 7 times. I mean, that's a horrible look. Not only that, Natividad was able to gain some control time, like a decent amount of control time in that fight as well. On top of that, Brady Heastan, who I think is a good fighter, good wrestler, was able to take him down 6 times in their fight. And then there's some other fights outside the UFC where he is getting taken down like very easily. So, yeah, I mean, Raul Rosas Jr. should be able to get this fight down to the mat early and often. And as long as the cardio of Raul Rosas Jr. holds up, he should be able to probably either win this fight by decision or maybe get a sub at some point. So, yeah, I mean, it's Raul Rosas Jr. Do I want to lay minus 260 on him? Not entirely. This is a guy that has dropped the ball before against, Cristian Rodríguez is a big favorite, but that's Cristian Rodríguez, who I think is much better than Ricky Turcios, much more rounded, much better takedown defense, especially. So, yeah, this should be a good spot for Raul Rosas Jr. to go up there. I think they're trying to continue to build this guy up slowly but surely, and this should be a good matchup for him. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one here?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun fight. I'm looking forward to seeing Raul back in the cage. He's fun to watch, man. He's really fun to watch. And Turcios, is when he gets the right opponent, he's in really exciting fights too. Like his tough fights were awesome, and his Brady Heastan finale win was a great fight. Even the Natividad fight. I mean, Natividad had looked terrible up until that point, and then Natividad showed out in that performance.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I was too, man. I mean, because like we hadn't seen Kevin succeed in the UFC up until that point, and then he got in there against Turcios, and I flat out thought that Natividad had won that fight. But either way, here we are. Ricky is an interesting guy, right? He's a little bit different, and so is Raul. This is a couple of unique individuals here in the cage, and Ricky can really bring some phenomenally exciting fights, and I think he could be a really fun opponent for Raul. And I just want to be careful about Raul at this point because I still feel like you look at the UFC wins over Jay Perrin and Terrence Mitchell, and I mean, like the Perrin win is way better than the Terrence Mitchell win, and still it's Jay Perrin, a guy that never got a UFC win. He barely even won a round in the UFC. So we've got a lot to learn about the 19-year-old Raul Rosas, who was born in 2004. So, but like you mentioned, the fact that Natividad got out there and wrestled the way that he did against Turcios, I can't be the one mispronouncing this guy's name. I got to get it right. Turcios. So we got those takedowns. And, if Raul gets those takedowns, he's way more dangerous with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and submission game than Kevin Natividad is. So I think it's a good matchup. I don't think they're trying to find Raul Rosas losses in Mexico City. So, I mean, I think that this is a matchup that they made, saying that this is a winnable matchup for you, kid. This guy just got out wrestled by Kevin Natividad over a 3-round period. And now, if you can get one takedown, you can potentially finish this fight. So I'm interested about the conditioning though, Brady, because this kid comes out, he goes ham, and if with the crowd going nuts with the adrenaline in front of that live audience at massive elevation, when this guy is basically in Texas, at very low elevation, where he grew up and where he trained most of the time. So it's going to be interesting to see how somebody who comes out so aggressive and grapples so heavy, if he doesn't get that early submission against a guy like Turcios, who we've seen go deep in fights and kind of like never really give up and just be there, be slippery, be slimy, find a way to be in that fight late and put more volume on his opponent. We could see Turcios finishing an exhausted Raul Rosas Jr. with a massive adrenaline dump in the third round if Raul doesn't manage his energy and his adrenaline correctly. So it's a fascinating fight. I mean, I think it's a great matchup for Rosas, and I think the most likely outcome, Brady, is a first round submission or a first round just violent ground and pound knockout. I mean, the way that he just beat 7 shades of shit out of Mitchell, like that dude owed him money. That was such an awesome performance, and that one was either in Mexico or it was the UFC Noche card that they did in Vegas, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it was the Vegas card.
Pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the Noche one. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like he came out and beat the hell out of Mitchell. That was just awesome. I mean, it was just really good one. So yeah, but you know, Turcios definitely a step up from Terrace Mitchell. Turcios a step up from Jay Perrin as well. So we'll see how this one plays out.
Yeah, I felt like a jackass. I had Raul Rosas Jr. by first round sub against Terrence Mitchell, and he knocks him. like when is he ever knocking out anybody? But yeah, Terrence Mitchell. I guess I should have saw it coming, huh?
He violently knocked him out on the ground, man. That was something else. That was fun to watch, man.
Who is the better striking here? I mean, by default, it's Turcios, but I'm not a big fan of Turcios' striking. Michael says Turcios is better at punching and kicking air. Yeah, man, it was that freaking Zahabi fight. It was just hard to watch. I remember being all over Turcios on DraftKings. I was like, dude, this guy's a DraftKings monster. He just goes nonstop. This guy can land a ton of significant strikes. And he went out there and just stood at distance the whole time and was like, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, instead of fighting. I mean, so I don't think either guy's the best striker in the world, but you got to favor Turcios by default, probably.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that sentiment so far. And the striking's a work in progress for Rosas, and it's going to be for a while. But he's so young; it can absolutely come along.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, Raul Rosas Jr. is minus 260. And we got Ricky Turcios plus 220. What's interesting is you kind of think maybe this fight could potentially end early with maybe a Rosas early finish. The over-under set at 2.5, and it's about a pick 'em. The under 2.5 minus 105, and the over 2.5 is minus 125.
Yeah, because you got a guy in Turcios who's not really a finisher on the offensive end, and he's a very tough guy, you know, who will go the full 15. So, and then on the other hand, you got a guy in Rosas who's super dangerous early in fights. So I think, you know, instead of playing the lines, you know, the time props, if you like that over, you probably like Turcios, the number, especially on Turcios, a lot better. And if you like the under, why not just bet Rosas first round?
Yeah. Dixon saying, Brady, I'm telling you, Rosas about to pull Arinya Nakamura and get the decision. I mean, I could see it like Turcios has never been subbed for what it's worth. So maybe he's able to survive. I'm not sure. But I could definitely see Raul Rosas Jr. putting Turcios in some really bad spots early on, though. Like, even put Cristian Rodríguez in some really bad spots in that first round. I thought he was going to sub Rodríguez, but was not able to get him out of there. And we saw what happened, right? We saw what happened in that second and third. Raul Rosas didn't have much left in that fight.
Yeah, and he's a young man. I mean, fighting in front of live crowds at his age, you know, that there's always that possibility that there's going to be an adrenaline dump.
Yep, 100%. All right, where is Rosas training at? He's training at Las Vegas?
I'm not sure. Let me look. I've just had it up here. Because if you go to the main card, not applicable, it says on SureDog right now. So where did they have him?
I think he's training in Mexico, but I'm not sure where.
Right now, it's not showing anything in terms of training camp on Tapology. On SureDog, it has him at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu Las Vegas. So we're going to have to find out
take a quick look at his Instagram, which I'm terrified to take a look at because this guy's a terrifying looking individual. And his account's private, so that helps a lot. Why is his account private? I'm gonna
I don't
what?
know. You're a
Never
public
seen it.
figure, Raul. AJ
That's,
says Syndicate MMA.
Okay, Syndicate MMA. I wonder when he got to Mexico City. That's scary, man. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, that's something to pay attention to because he is somebody who's had cardio problems. And if Ricky's out there in Mexico City 2 weeks ago and he's not, that's something that you really got to pay attention to. That's going to be really necessary information this week. I said it at the beginning of the show. I'll say it again right now, Brady. Cain Velasquez got tired in Mexico City. You know.
Yeah, J-Bone saying there's a tweet. Yeah, shout out to MMA Prediction Guru. He put out a phenomenal tweet, man.
He did, yeah.
Just with just tons of information about where fighters are training, when they arrive. I mean, it had to have taken like hours to put together. And then shout out to Will Martin as well on Twitter. He did kind of the same thing, just extra info. So I would check out those two tweets. And yeah, they're saying that Ricky Turcios has been in Mexico for about a month, 3+ weeks.
So Turcios has. Okay, so we got to find out about Rosas then.
Yeah, there wasn't any info that I can find on Rosas, which would be very interesting to know. If he is training at Syndicate, I would be interested to know like when he has arrived at Mexico City.
Yeah, if he's at Syndicate, he's at sea level.
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah.
All right. Appreciate that, AJ. And Rosas attempts more takedowns than Turcios attempts strike. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. It's crazy. All right, let's keep moving on. We have interesting fight here. Daniel Zellhuber going against Francisco Prado. We got Zellhuber, 24 years old, 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. Prado, 21 years old, 5'10" with a 71-inch reach. Prado, 3 years younger. Zellhuber with a 3-inch height advantage and a 6-inch reach advantage. Daniel Zellhuber 4-1 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Trey Ogden, lost a decision against Trey Ogden, a fight that I'll never forget, a fight that still till this day makes no sense. You know, Trey Ogden getting outstruck at distance by Jordan Levitt and then losing a decision to Trey. I mean, it was just incredible. And then he goes out there, beats Lana Venata. The fight probably should have been stopped in the first, and then ends up winning that fight by decision, and then submits Christos Giagos in the second round, his last time out. As far as Prado, made his debut against Jamie Mullarkey, believe on somewhat short notice, lost that fight by decision, and then knocks out Ottman Azaitar in the first round. The problem I have with Daniel Zellhuber is, I don't know, I was so impressed with this guy, right? Prior to his debut against Trey Ogden, I thought this guy was the goods. He was like 22 years old at the time. He has, he's 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. I love the volume, the power, sneaky grappling as well to go along with it. This guy's only going to get better, training with some great guys, right? And then he has that stinker against Trey Ogden. It's like, what the heck, dude? What's going on? And then against Lana Venata, looks great in the first round. As the fight went on, kind of got a little bit more competitive than you'd like to see. And then in the Giagos fight, Giagos probably won the first round. I mean, it wasn't the greatest look, and then Zellhuber was able to club and sub him there. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it all comes down to the Prado side to me. Like, this guy's 21 years old, hasn't really fought the best competition. The Mullarkey fight wasn't the best look, but that was on short notice. Knocks out Ottman Azaitar. That doesn't tell me much. I don't think Prado's that bad, man. I think he's a solid fighter. I think this fight, minute for minute, could be potentially competitive. And I think this fight primarily does play out on the feet as well. I know Zellhuber got a sub in his last fight against Giagos, but that was a club and sub. I don't think he's gotten a takedown, and neither has Prado as well. So I think we got a striker versus striker matchup. Zellhuber, probably the guy with more volume, the guy with a pretty big reach advantage. But yeah, this line, I'm guessing it's probably wide. And yeah, minus 270 for Zellhuber. I don't know. Like, when has he ever looked like a minus 270 favorite outside of that, Christos Giagos fight, which, like I said, he probably lost the first round. So I don't know if I can trust him. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm really kind of putting Zellhuber into the minute winning category that you don't want, like a guy that's not really putting stamps on fights yet. The Ogden fight was just really disappointing. Lucas Almeida gets the best of him in the first round. It has him in trouble a couple different times, and then Zellhuber kind of wins the second and third, and he gets that win on Dana White's Contender Series to get into the UFC. And he has, a bad debut. And sometimes you just gotta forgive the bad debut. I mean, we could go over the list of fighters that just shit their bed in a UFC debut and then wound up being phenomenal fighters. So, and with Daniel Zellhuber, I think we better err on the side of caution at the age of 24 and say, okay, he fought a veteran like Trey Ogden who tends to hypnotize people and come up with really good game plans and find ways to win decisions. But with Prado, I see the archetype of fighter, Brady, that could be really dangerous against the Zellhuber type. Because Zellhuber's got some power, but if you're Prado and you've got faith in your power, this is the kind of opponent you just walk down and you say, I'm willing to eat 2 or 3 to land 1. And it could look a lot like Volkanovski Topuria last night, where, Volk's kind of touching him, moving, throwing twice as much volume, avoiding the blasts. And you see, Topuria, that punch that he knocked him out with was like the 6th punch in that combination. Volkanovski was doing what he needed to do defensively, and then he just got caught where he couldn't move his head back because he was backed up against the fence. And Topuria didn't get discouraged at the first couple punches missed, and then he got in there and he found that shot. I kind of look at Prado Zellhuber like, yeah, if Zellhuber wins, it would look like a Volk victory over Topuria would have looked. But if Prado wins, he probably gets inside on this dude, which is something he's going to have to do anyway, right, Brady? He's 3 inches shorter. He's at a 6-inch reach advantage. If this kid stays at distance and tries to outpoint Zellhuber, he's an idiot. He really needs to get in there and mix this up and find his way into that pocket. Eat 1, eat 2, eat 3, but keep this guy on his back foot, march him down, pressure him, and beat him. That's the path for Prado. Because if he doesn't do that, I think Zellhuber he's not going to take down Zellhuber. The guy's takedown defense has looked phenomenal. Zellhuber is a hometown Mexico City product. So this guy is very used to being at elevation. Even though now he trains in Vegas, he's very well aware of what it takes to excel at elevation, because that's where he started his MMA career. He's born and raised at elevation in Mexico City. So he's the hometown kid. He's the more technical striker. He's the better minute winner at range. He can use his grappling in reverse to keep fights at range where he can win those minutes and eventually find the moment. But the antidote to that is to pressure. Put him on his back foot. Make up for the lack of reach that you have by making up for that with the pressure that you bring to close that distance. And you're going to have to show some durability. And Francisco Prado looks a lot like Drew Dober. And if that chin holds up as well, Brady, I think that pressure style game plan for Prado could eventually find some big shots here on Zellhuber and make this a very interesting fight.
Yeah, I mean, Zellhuber minus 270. He opened up minus 450. Goodness. So minus 270 now for Zellhuber. Prado opened up plus 350, currently plus 230. The over under set at 2.5. The under 2.5 minus 140. The over 2.5 is plus 110. Yeah, I don't have a strong take on the total. Do you?
Well, as I talked through that fight, I realized that Daniel Zellhuber's got a ridiculous chin.
He does. Both guys do, really.
Yeah, because Prado's never been finished, but you remember he's almost undefeated, and he fought Malarkey in Australia on short notice. He didn't get finished in that fight, but we don't really know what the durability looks like quite yet. But
he has a brick for a head, though.
He does, and he looks like Dober. So maybe that just like that archetype of butt chin and good looks, for some reason makes you impervious to knockouts. And if that's the case, then I'll go plus 110 because I don't have a lot of faith in Zellhuber getting a finish. I'm seeing him more as a minute winner right now. And if I can count on Zellhuber's durability, which I've shown that I think we've shown that this kid has got a really good chin. We saw it in the Almeida fight. We saw him absorb some damage in the Yagos fight. And even in the Venata fight after the first round, he was eating some shots. So, yeah, I think maybe the over 2.5 at plus 110 isn't the worst look here.
Yep, should be an interesting fight. Looking forward to it. But we have 2 fights left, Weezy. We have the co-main event, which I do want to confirm. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's 5 rounds, right? Let me double
It
check.
is 5 rounds. Yes, I looked.
Okay.
According to Tapology, it is 5 rounds.
Yeah, it's a 5-round fight, which is good. Good. So we got 2 5-round fights, which I like a lot. Yair Rodríguez, Brian Ortega, the rematch. You're gonna try to run it back here. We got Rodríguez, 31 years old, 5'11" with a 71-inch reach. Ortega, 32 years old, 5'8" with a 69-inch reach. Rodríguez, 1 year younger, 3-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage. Rodríguez is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Decision win against Jeremy Stevens. Decision loss against Max Holloway. That TKO injury against Brian Ortega. Submission win against Josh Emmett. And then he did a knockout loss to Alexander Volkanovski. As far as Brian Ortega, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Knockout win against Frankie Edgar. Knockout loss to Max Holloway. Decision win against Korean Zombie. Decision loss against Alexander Volkanovski. Then that injury loss to Yair Rodríguez. So, yeah, I'm concerned about Brian Ortega. Like, where's this guy been? He has not fought, I think, almost like 2 years, it seems. Like, that Rodríguez fight was a long time ago. So I'm not sure where he's been. And I'm not sure, when he arrived to Mexico either. Apparently, he's been doing some training in like California, and I don't know, where he's at. Like, I don't know. Like, I have a lot of question marks with the Brian or Ortega side. And in terms of, stylistically how this fight plays out, obviously Brian Ortega has that incredible grappling, just next level black belt in BJJ, but no, he's never had the wrestling to get it down. 19 fights. This guy only has 9 takedowns. Yair Rodríguez, solid takedown defense, 59%. And then on the feet, it's just one-way traffic, in my opinion. Yair Rodríguez's striking is incredible. I went back and watched that Josh Emmett fight. The way he was attacking the body of Josh Emmett, showed a ton of power, hurt Josh Emmett, multiple times in that fight, ended up submitting him. That was an incredible performance, the best Yair we've ever seen. Even against Max Holloway in that decision loss, he looked incredible in that fight as well. The strikings looked better than ever. Obviously got knocked out in his last fight by Volkanovski, but, obviously a tough fight there. Yeah, I think it's all comes down to whether or not Yair is able to keep this upright. And if he does, Brian Ortega has and always will be just a walking punching bag, man. This guy has, am I looking at that right, Weezy? A 50% striking defense at distance. Like, this guy is just so hittable. I think Yair Rodríguez is going to beat this guy up on the feet. But if this fight does hit the mat, that's where it's Ortega's world. I just can't trust him at this point. Yair's been much more active. He's fought, Volkanovski, Emmett since then, whereas Ortega, I don't know what he's been doing. So I like Yair here. I like Yair potential KO here even. I think Ortega's so hittable. And although Ortega is super durable, like Yair has nasty kicks to the body, to the head, some sneaky power as well. I could see him potentially finishing Brian Ortega. So yeah, give me Yair here, but it's a weird fight. But I'm glad they're running it back because the first fight obviously we didn't get to see much of it.
I know. Yeah. And that's, we got a 1.5 year layoff that you mentioned here for Ortega coming off that shoulder injury that he sustained in the Rodríguez fight. So yeah, it's there's a big unknown here. Like you said, how long did it take Brian to rehab from that very serious injury? And how long has he been cleared to train for? And how long has he been training and who with? Because, he was training that, he's bouncing around with some different camps for a while. And, we've seen Brian Ortega take long layoffs before. This isn't the first time. And this guy has not been particularly active as a pro. His pro career is almost 14 years long, Brady. He's only got 19 pro fights. This guy's not even fighting close to twice a year. So this isn't the first time that we've seen Brian Ortega take a long layoff and then come back. And I think the last time that we saw it was he took that terrific beating from Max Holloway, and then he comes back and he outstrikes Chan Sung Jung. I mean, like he came back with much improved striking to the point it would look so good that they were like, they gave him a title shot against Volkanovski. And then we found out that the striking wasn't at Volkanovski's level, which very few people have. I mean, Max Holloway's striking wasn't even at Volkanovski's level over their 3 fights. So, now Ortega takes the Yair Rodríguez fight. Do you know where that fight was lined?
Yeah, I can look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was a very closely lined fight.
I kind of
Like,
felt the same way. I know I had Ortega in that fight. So because and here's the one stat that I wanted to bring up, Brady, that I think is very important. In Brian Ortega's first 7 UFC fights, he attempted,
oh
I
wow,
think,
looks like sorry to cut you off.
yeah.
Ortega was closed at minus 174.
Oh wow, he was that big of a favorite, huh? So that's interesting.
That is
Um,
interesting.
so first 7 fights for Ortega, we got 7 takedown attempts, right? 7 takedown attempts in 7 fights. The last 4, somebody got in Brian's ear and they're like, "You're a really good grappler. Maybe you should wrestle because your striking defense isn't that good." All of a sudden, the Holloway fight, the Korean Zombie fight, the Volkanovski fight, and the Yair Rodríguez fight, in those 4 fights, Brady, we see 31 takedown attempts. So now Brian is fighting in a way that accentuates where he's most dangerous, which is with that really opportunistic submission game that he has. And where have we seen Yair fail? It's with the submission defense. Now, Yair's obviously cleaned a lot of that up over the last few years, but Brian Ortega, I think the best path here is by submission, because even though he attempted those 31 takedowns in his last 4 fights, Brady, he still only got 8 of them, which isn't horrible. It's a pretty, it's over 25%. It's around 30%. Nothing to write home about. But he only got 145, 57, 54, and 144 seconds of control time. So if you add that up, it's 400 seconds, which isn't even 7 minutes over fights that went a total of 15 rounds. So he's not going to win minutes with his grappling, right? He could take you down, but chances are you're either getting right back up or he's going to try to work to a position and start to work for those submissions. If he doesn't get the submission, he's not going to be a guy that goes out there and wins 4 of the 5 rounds by racking up 8 takedowns and 16 minutes of control time. So I feel like Ortega by submission is his best path, because if he's unable to get this fight down to the ground or unable to find like the back in a scramble or something like that, Yair has got to be the better minute winner and moment winner at distance striking range.
Yep, agreed, man. Yair opened up he opened up plus 130 this time around, actually. Currently minus 185. Brian Ortega opened up minus 150, currently plus 160. So that line flipped, and it looks like more money is coming in on Yair. The over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 140. The under 2.5 rounds plus 110. I don't know. I don't like that. I think there could be violence here potentially. Yair has a massive striking advantage, in my opinion. The guy kicks super hard. Ortega's a walking punching bag, but I think it might have to be attritional because Ortega has a brick for a head. The dude's next level tough. And then as far as, if Ortega wins, I agree. I think it's a submission as well. So I like violence, but not sure if I want to play the under 2.5 there. Any thoughts on the money line or the total? I think I'm going to stay away from the money line. There's just so many question marks on this Ortega side.
Yeah, that long layoff is a huge red flag. The shoulder injury, which isn't his fault, obviously, that's a huge red flag. So, how is that shoulder injury affecting his ability to be able to box, to be able to submit people potentially, even if that shoulder never got back to 100%? So, and Brian's turning 33 years old here in 3 days. And Yair's a year and a half younger than him. So, it's going to be an interesting fight. I don't really know what to expect from Ortega here.
How many takedowns does Ortega average per fight?
0.95 takedowns per 15 minutes of action, but he does have 8 takedowns over his last 4 fights. But the control time, just 7% control time, Brady. This guy's just not winning minutes with the grappling. It's moment winning or bust.
Yeah, 100%. That's nice to see, though, that he's going for takedowns. It's really nice to see. I like that.
He has to do that, right? Because his boxing is good.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Especially
yeah, his boxing's very good, and it's gotten a lot better. We saw it in the Korean Zombie fight, but yeah, you don't want to stand at range with Yair if you're able to take him down.
No, you really don't. You really don't. So yeah, we'll move on now to the main event, and yes, it is. Right, Weezy? It's I don't know how
Oh
much.
yes,
I don't know how much,
yes,
but it is. Yeah.
couple thousand feet, Brady. Salt Lake's it is. Salt Lake
Yeah.
City's like like between like high fours and high fives, but
Mhm.
Mexico City's like 7,500
Yeah, it's like
feet.
70 something. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. And they're
Yeah.
putting the world's biggest gasser on the card, Daniel De Silva Lacerda. He's gonna gas out in the warm-ups, dude. And he probably shouldn't even warm up because he's gonna be gassed out on the walkout. I mean,
Dude,
it's gonna be
if
bad. It's
he
gonna be
has
terrible.
hair dye in, that's extra weight on the head. That could actually make him die, die even quicker in there. Did I mention that Cain Velasquez got tired in Mexico City, Brady?
I don't think you did, but now you did, so it's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Heck yeah. All right. We'll move on to this main event here. Before we do so, if you guys have not already, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe here to Pub Sports. We go live every Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Do you want to shout out the Pub Sports Radio Pick'ems contest? What's more, free to enter, $100 to first, Tapology type format. Pick the round, the winner, the method, and collect your money if you are first. They're $100. All right. Main event time. We got Brandon Moreno going against Brandon Royval. We got Moreno, 30 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Royval, 31 years old, 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. Moreno, he is 1 year younger. It's going to be Royval with a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach disadvantage. Brandon Moreno, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Submission win against Davison. Decision loss to Davison. Knockout win against Kai Kara France. Knockout win against Davison Figueiredo. And then a decision loss to Alexander Pantoja. As far as Brandon Royval, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Sub loss to Pantoja. Decision win against Bontarine. Submission win against Matt Schnell. Knockout win against Mateus Nicolau. Then a decision loss against Alexander Pantoja. So Royval has 3 losses in the UFC. 2 of them to Pantoja. 1 was against Moreno. So this is their second time fighting. In the first fight, I think Brandon Royval's shoulder maybe popped out. He got hurt in that fight towards the end of the first round. The fight was stopped with like 2 seconds left. But up until then, it was a little bit competitive early, but Moreno was able to get the fight down to the mat. And I think that's probably the path to victory here, man. I mean, Brandon Royval is a guy that has, in my opinion, just a huge hole in his game, and that's the takedown defense. 40% takedown defense. A gust of wind takes this guy down, and that's kind of his style. He doesn't mind if you take him down, right? You know, he'll pull guard even in some fights. He'll get taken down because he wants to be on his back in a lot of these fights. But at this level, at this high level against the Pantoja, against Moreno, it's not the best look because Moreno can take you down. His grappling's really good. He can take your back. He can't control you, and that's what we saw Alexander Pantoja do. That's what we even saw. We even saw Bontarine take this guy down 8 times. So yeah, I think Moreno's a decent sized favorite here for a reason. I think Royval's probably finish or bust, and finishing Moreno is just, I don't know if it's possible. So I like Moreno here. I'm not sure what the path for Royval is other than landing a big shot and knocking out Moreno, which Moreno's been dropped a couple times, but never finished nonetheless. I think Moreno has a clear path here with the wrestling. The striking should be competitive. So give me Moreno here. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Great fight. And it seems like a tough matchup for Royval because Royval's a finisher, and Brandon Moreno can't be finished, right? And Royval puts a pace on his opponents, and that pace that he puts on the feet, even if his opponents don't really want to wrestle or grapple with him, oftentimes they're left with no choice because of the pace and the volume that he puts on him, that it makes them reactively wrestle because they're under constant attack and pressure from a fighter like Royval. But Moreno's not really breakable in that way. He's always had great conditioning. He's always had a ton of heart, and he's always had phenomenal durability. And Brandon Royval is a minute loser in the grappling exchanges. Look, he's seeing 9 takedown attempts per 15 minutes, and he's allowing 5.34 takedowns and allowing 51% control time to his opponents. And with that offensive onslaught that Brandon Royval brings on the feet, what does that open up? it opens up counter striking opportunities. And what does Brandon Moreno do phenomenally well? He gets in that pocket and he lands counter strikes because he can trust his chin. So both of these guys have been dropped a bunch of times, right? But one of these guys is a lot more durable than the other one, and that's Brandon Moreno. Both of these guys have fought really good levels of competition. Both of their wins are really impressive. I mean, Moreno's strength of schedule is better according to my metric overall and in his wins, but both of these guys are fighting really top-notch guys. But I rate Moreno as the better minute winner in the grappling exchanges. And I also wonder how long Brandon Royval's pace will be sustainable at elevation, right? Because we know he trains at elevation and we know that he always puts on the pace, but this is a 5-round fight and not a 3-round fight. So, and it's at even higher elevation than I think than he trains at, although I could be wrong about that in terms, I don't know exactly where Englewood, Colorado's elevation is, but it shouldn't be too much of a difference for Brandon because he's always training at elevation and he always does put on a pace. I just wonder how sustainable that pace is for 5 rounds. And we just saw Royval's pace kind of get, like Pantoja didn't feel like dealing with his pace. So what did he do, Brady? He just took him down and held him down for most of the fight, and if Brandon wants to do that, I think the opportunity is there to do that. But I also think Brandon's striking is very, very good and that he's not going to be out of his depth on the feet in this fight either. So I do like Moreno here. I think it's a good stylistic matchup for him. I love the durability. I love the small strength to schedule advantage that he has. And I love the fact that he can win minutes in the grappling exchanges while not really losing minutes at stand-up range.
Yep. I thought you broke it down pretty good here. Moreno opened up minus 250, currently minus 255. Royval opened up plus 210, currently plus 215 there. As far as the total, the over-under is set at 3.5 rounds. The over 3.5 minus 145. The under 3.5 is plus 115. Kind of surprising. I kind of thought they maybe set it at 4.5 just because Moreno, I mean, nobody's finishing Moreno, and then Royval did go 25 minutes in his last fight. I don't think Royval's finishing Moreno, but maybe Moreno could potentially, get a submission win here. You've seen Royval submitted before. I think Moreno's a really good grappler. I could see him at least attempting some subs here, but I could also see it going the full 25 as well. Both these guys are tough dudes. Any thoughts on the money line minus 255? Any thoughts on the total, Weezy?
Yeah, I don't think I'd lay minus 255 on Moreno because Royval is a pretty unique opponent, man. He brings a lot of really tough qualities to the table in terms of that conditioning, that output, that reckless offensive output, and not really no care for his own safety or the ability to lose minutes on the ground. He just really does push a pace that can make a lot of opponents very uncomfortable. So I don't think I'm going to touch the money line here, but I kind of do think that the over looks pretty good, but it worries me at elevation. So this might just be a giant stay away from me because it's going to be such an enjoyable fight to watch. I might not need money on this one.
Yeah. Where is Royval training?
Factory X. He's always been at Factory X.
Let's see here. So Brandon Moreno's training at, I'm going to mispronounce this city and people are going to probably give me crap for it. I'm not the best at Spanish. I only took like a couple years of it. Puebla? Is that a city in Mexico? Puebla.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's training there.
Okay.
Along with Eric Silva, Claudio Poyas. That's Diego Lopez's gym then, apparently. And where is Royval? I don't see Royval on here. I don't know when Royval arrived, but yeah, it could be interesting, but I don't know. It's hard to imagine Royval ever getting tired, though, right? I mean, this guy's gas tank's incredible. Both these guys' gas tanks are incredible. So maybe it'll play a factor, maybe not. But yeah, Moreno has the clear path to victory. I think he probably takes it here. Puebla. Yeah, that sounds about right. Puebla. It wasn't even a bad attempt. It wasn't even that bad of an attempt. But yeah, I took 3 years of Spanish. So there we go. All right,
I did a
Weezy.
lot more than that, Brady. My dad owned a restaurant, and I've worked in a couple of kitchens. So I mean, I've taken Spanish in school and at work,
There
and
you go.
that's always the best way to learn. It's just to be around people that are speaking it. Then you get to imitate them, and then that's how you learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Weezy, we did it. We went through all 13 fights. Any final thoughts on this card? I think this card's a banger, man, top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Mexico card, and I mean, how many boring Mexican fighters can you name, right?
None. I
I'll,
can't
I'll
name
give you
any.
a couple minutes if you want, but you're not gonna. It's gonna be hard to. And then you got the crowd; they're gonna be going nuts. At elevation brings a whole new wrinkle into the gambling strategies here. That's very interesting to analyze. So I mean, I'm excited. This is the UFC trying, Brady.
Yeah,
They
they
tried
are.
last week. They're trying this week, and then they're trying to piss us off
Oh, look
next
at
week.
this. Look at this.
What?
This card?
No.
It's not a
No, man,
2.5
two
for a fight
5-round
night.
fights.
Get out of
You
here.
got the Argentinian Drew Dober on this card. You got the handsome Raul Rosas Jr. against Turcios. Jauregui's on this card. Loco Torres. Quiñonez Barcelos. This is a good card, man.
Especially compared to next week. I mean, next week isn't that Gazeev Rosenstruck? Why are they in a main event? My God.
Why are they in a main event? You know what one of the fights is on that card? I'm not even joking. Muhammad Yair is squaring off against the guy that got starched by McKinney Intense. Brandon Murat against Muhammad Yair is a fight on that card.
I forget who Muhammad Yair is. Probably
He's
for a good
from
reason.
the United Arab Emirates, and he's the guy that got knocked out in the third round. Was that Yaya that got knocked out in the third round? Oh no, that was Jubilee. Jubilee got knocked out by Breeden. Yaya just fought Trevor Peak, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's Muhammad Yair. Okay. Yeah, that's a wild fight.
And there's a lot of them like that. It's not good.
Yeah. No, Gazeev debuted and fought, was it Martin Budai?
Yes.
Last time? And yeah, so this is a second fight, and he's getting a main event, which is wild. And I agree, Go. Bring back Harry Hunsucker. I agree.
Go.
But this fight card, for a fight card, I mean, this is a 4, maybe 4.5 for me out of 5. This is a great fight card, 100%.
Great card. Yeah. Mexico stand up, Mexico City stand up. This is going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to it.
100%. All right, Weezy, any special plans for this week for content, or same old Just a Tip Tuesday and some Ask Weezy?
Yeah, same old this week. Just a Tip Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time. Ask Weezy, 10 o'clock Wednesday Central Time. DFS show, 8 o'clock Central Wednesday time. I know that Gordo's Valentine, Min Yang Zhang,
Yes,
absolutely served it up for him. That was his Valentine, and Min Yang showed the love right back to Gordo. Gordo put him in his DraftKings lineup, and Min Yang showed out, got a first round knockout. So happy Valentine's Day, Gordo. I wish you and Min Yang the best. But yeah, normal week of content this week. Looking forward to these fights. Looking forward to stacking cash tickets like flapjacks, turning this year around. Time to circle the fucking wagons, Brady. I've started off horrible. You're not doing as well as you'd like to do. We fucking circle the wagons this week. We beat these bookies with a bag of oranges. We're gonna cut them open. We're gonna bathe in their blood, and we're gonna get that ball rolling downhill and get some momentum this week. Let's go.
we're gonna recreate the Orange Man film. We're gonna recreate it. We're gonna make it better because, by the way, I was going to purchase that film, and then I watched the trailer, and it was like the worst trailer I've ever seen. Like I could have made a better film than that. I mean, whoever made that Orange Man film should be ashamed of themselves. So I didn't bother buying it. So maybe we remake the film this week, and we juice the bookies up.
Let's go. That's the plan for this week, Brady.
100%.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I did post not a full card. I posted the main event breakdown already tonight. I'll be posting the full card breakdown tomorrow. I wanted to dig more into 2 of these 13 fights. And then other than that, same old content as well. Like on your way out, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio, and best of luck for UFC Mexico. We'll see you guys soon.